Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar from Anicca Digital. It's myself and Stanley who I'm hosting today, but you'll notice I've got lots of nice, friendly faces. I'm actually expecting a fourth guest who is lurking in the background. So I'm very pleased to be welcoming Martin, Dixon, Josh and Jono. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a second. And let's just do a little bit of housekeeping and give you an idea of what's happening today. So this is an SEO special and it's been recorded. We're a mix of interviews and recordings from the conference that we held at the beginning of June, which is Leicester Digital Live, which was held live. And the order of today is, Martin, you're going first, aren't you? So can you just quickly say who you are and say hello to everybody?
Yeah, hello everybody. Martin Broadhurst, sales and marketing consultant from Broadhurst Digital, based in Derby.
And you're talking about AI today, aren't you? Which is a fascinating subject. And as a direct result of me seeing Martin speak a few months ago, we've actually implemented quite a lot of this ourselves. Then I think we've got Dixon next. Now, Dixon, you're a very well-known face in the industry. Oh, Jono's just arrived. Hi, I'm glad you're here. Just in time, Jono. So Dixon, if you'd like to just quickly introduce yourself for everybody, that would be amazing.
Sure. My name is Dixon Jones. I'm the CEO of a company called InLinks, which is an entity-based entity recognition tool and natural language processing algorithm and knowledge graph, and we use that as a slightly different way to do SEO. I was previously known as the marketing director of Majestic, which some of you will know, and I still sort of wave the flag for them occasionally as well.
Excellent. And then Jono, your mic's off, but
That's me.
Jono's actually spoken previously to you guys, and he's spoken a lot online with us before. But Jono, do you just want to introduce who you are and what you're talking about today?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I closed the wrong tab and lost the conference room, so I'm glad I made it back in time. Yeah, I'm Jono. I'm head of SEO at Yoast, where you probably come across us in the context of WordPress and more recently Shopify. I do a lot of stuff around our product roadmap, where we're trying to optimize for somewhere around 13 million websites. So yeah, there's a lot of technical SEO, there's a lot of content optimization, and a slightly different view on the industry and some of the types of challenges that sites face. So never dull.
No, very, and I always enjoy watching your presentations as well, because I always learn lots of new things. So yeah, that's why you've come back again. And Josh, you're I hadn't met you before. You work at Ahrefs, so tell me a little bit about what you do at Ahrefs and what you're talking about today.
Yeah, so I'm Joshua Hardwick. So I work at Ahrefs. So I'm the head of content at Ahrefs. Basically, just means I'm in charge of the blog, various other bits of content, a lot of educational resources on how to use the tool. So yeah, Ahrefs, like Yoast and all of these others, you probably come across it if you're in the SEO kind of world. Big SEO tool, one of the kind of big 2 or 3 these days. Backlink checking, keyword research, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'll be talking about just how to use Ahrefs today, various use cases and stuff like that.
Excellent. So the format for today is, first of all, we're going to do 3 polls, which will give us, actually that was a really good link, because we'll be finding out exactly what people are doing in their day job and what their level of knowledge is. So I've got a couple of polls, and then the guys, if you'd like to turn your cameras off, and I'll stay on with Martin, who's going to present first. So we're going to, you don't have to turn you don't have to turn it off yet, but it's fine if you do, it doesn't matter. They were so quick to turn their cameras off. That was really funny. You probably want to see the results of the poll first, and we'll talk about that. But when Martin starts presenting, we'll play his video, and then there's about 10 to 15. You can tell we've not rehearsed. We did do this live. I think it was a little bit easier live. And then we do about 10 to 15 minutes questions. So if you want to hop in and out, you can sort of come in around every 45 minutes. But the other thing is that we will be sending the whole video out later on. So even if you miss a bit, you can catch up later. So let's run those polls. Also, while I remember, I'm really rubbish at doing all the admin. I don't have like a checklist like Katie. If you go top right, there's handouts, so you can download the 4 presentations. Yeah, that way. And you'll get, as I said, you'll get the video of the whole thing later. So my first question we're going to ask you, it should appear, in just a second, I just got to load it up, is about what you currently do. So hopefully you guys, can you see the poll? Has it appeared on your screens, guys? Yep. Okay. So do you or your company use search engine optimization, SEO, within your organization? We do have a lot of students. So the first question is always really to cover them. So I'm a student, unemployed, or I'm working for an organization that's not doing any marketing. I work for a company that is not doing SEO. I work for a company that is not doing SEO, but is writing blogs and creating other types of web content. I'm personally responsible for writing web content. I work as part of an in-house team that is responsible for writing web content and doing SEO. Someone else or another team is doing SEO. A company uses a freelancer or agency to do SEO. I am a freelancer. I work in an agency. So it's a big choice of questions, and they can answer more than one. So don't be surprised if we get to more than 100%. And pretty typical result. We've got quite a spread. So the most popular result at the moment is I work as part of an in-house team that is responsible for writing web content and doing SEO. That's about a third. I've got another quarter. I'm personally responsible for writing web content and doing SEO. And then I've got a few that are they're writing content, but they're not actually doing SEO at all, which is really interesting, isn't it? Because that's people that we perhaps could elevate. And then finally, someone else is in the team is doing SEO. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's generally mainly, I would say the majority of people are doing some form of SEO, which is probably why they're here today. My next question is about current level of experience. So again, lots of choices here. And please do answer more than one. Obviously, if you are already at an advanced level, you don't need to say you're an intermediate as well. Otherwise, that gets very confusing. But there's quite a lot here as well. So what areas or levels of experience do you have in SEO? Tick all that apply. I have no experience of SEO. I'm a complete beginner. I have a basic understanding of what SEO is, but no practical experience. I have to write content for my website, so I do try to introduce a few key phrases, titles, and descriptions. That's basic understanding of what we call on-page SEO. And then the next one is I have a good understanding of on-page SEO and use that in my job. So I'm starting to ask them a bit more detail here. I understand some technical SEO factors enough to talk to my developer. I have a good understanding of technical SEO and use that in my job. I understand the basics of link building and trying to use that in my job, e.g. digital PR, or if you're in SEO. I have a good understanding of offline SEO. And then I've got some advanced questions at the end. I have advanced knowledge of many aspects of SEO and use them in my in-house role. I have advanced knowledge of many aspects of SEO and use them in my freelance or agency role. So I always go for a diverse mix of questions so that we can make sure we cover all bases. And interesting, I have 15% said I have a basic understanding of what SEO is, but no practical experience. So that means you're going to have to go, we'll have to go gently with them on the questions. The most popular answer at the moment is I have to write content for my website and I try to introduce a few key phrases, but don't really know anything else. That's probably the most, and then it's a pretty even spread. And I guess the people with advanced knowledge are probably the Anicca team that are watching. Okay, my final question then is the one about technology and software. So I think this is going to be quite revealing. Not too many choices this time. Which of the following software do you use in your business? Please tick all that apply. The first one is, I need to send it. Sorry, I forgot to share it. The reason I'm going through this palaver is because basically none of this is recorded in the webinar. And so if I don't talk about it, we have a big silence for like 10 minutes. Which of the following software do you use in your business? I don't work in an organization doing SEO. I work in a company that is interested in SEO, but they don't use any software. This is quite a common one. People, they're trying to do content, they're trying to do the website, but they don't actually use any tools, and it makes their job quite difficult. The next one is Google Analytics, Google Keyword Planner, Search Console, Speed Test, and any other Google tools. That's by far the most popular. I've got over 30% basically using the free tools. Interestingly, nobody is talking about Bing tools, which is a bit of a gap because there's some really good free Bing tools. Like they've got Webmaster Tools, a good key phrase planner. They've got Clarity, which is a free version of Hotjar. Now here's your tools. So Yoast 16%, Ahrefs 7%, InLinks 4%. That's very good. And AI tools for copywriting and creative 5%. I suspect some of these might be the Anicca team. Other free tools or plugins, and really interesting. 20% use some paid tools. So people are prepared to spend some money. So that's good. So hopefully that will mean that they'll learn something new, and they might even sign up to some of your free demos and things today. So let me just stop that. Is there any questions or any comments on that? Any of the team? I don't know whether anybody was surprised by any of those roles. Oh, we've got a few people in the tool. Ben, hi Ben. SEO Power Suite and Rank Math. Not heard of Rank Maths. Has anybody used Rank Math before? Yeah, Dixon, is it any good? Oh, you're all saying yes now.
So I'm not going to say it's good because Yoast is here. So I have it on one site so I can compare with Yoast, but I use the Yoast tool most of the time.
What a politically correct answer.
Yeah, I'll add to that if you fancy viewing their source code at any time, source code even, and searching for the word Yoast, you may be surprised to see how often that turns up. I'm not suggesting that they copied our entire code base and just renamed it, but you go do your own research.
Excellent. Okay, well, look, let's dive in it. I'll just give you a bit of an idea of what the schedule is. So we are just about to dive into Martin's presentation, which will take half an hour. So that will get us to about 9:45. So I'm guessing we're going to be starting Dixon's about 10. So, but do come online about 9:45, Dixon, just in case. And then we will then run Dixon's talk for half an hour, and then that gives us a quarter of an hour before. So I'm guessing, Jono, you'll start about 10:30, maybe 11:15, but if you can hang around then. And then Josh, I'm guessing you'll be starting somewhere between 11 and 11:15, if that's okay for everybody. So guys, you can turn your cameras off now. Stalk in the background. It'll just be me and Martin to start with. So Martin, if you want to turn your camera, and we'll see you guys all later. Excellent. So a quick one then, Martin. So how long have you been looking into the AI tools? Because I sort of started noticing ads for actual products for AI and copywriting and stuff about a year ago. So was that about when you started looking at this, or did you start a bit earlier?
The kind of wider AI piece I first got introduced to it probably about 2018 through the HubSpot platform and what they were doing with things like intelligent lead scoring. Specifically in response, the AI copywriting tools, they exploded onto the scene last year. You were right, it was about a year, 18 months ago, when OpenAI released the API for GPT-3. And then all of a sudden...
You're going to talk about anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, it comes on. So that's when they exploded onto the scene.
Yeah. So the first one I was sort of aware was things like Jasper.
Yeah.
But we're using copy.ai, I think, as a result of your recommendation. We looked at a load and we've gone to that one. So if you can name a favorite when we're going, is there a one tool for best, or is it horses for courses and you need to shop around for different things?
There's one called ScaleNut, which I really like, particularly in comparison to Jasper for long form copy. But I'll be honest, I tend to use OpenAI's toolkit direct now.
Okay. Oh, that's really interesting to know. So Anicca team, make a note of that, please. Right. Okay. Shall we hit the go? So we can turn our cameras off and mics off and watch the video, which is half an hour. So we'll come into the room about just before 9:45. Because it's 28 minutes. So I'll speak to you in about half an hour.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Martin Broadhurst. I'm a digital marketing and sales strategist with a bent on CRM, automation, and more recently, AI. I'm a bit of an AI for marketing evangelist, so to speak. So today I want to speak to you about how to use AI as part of your digital marketing strategy. Now, I'm very much a techno-optimist. I like to think that something like AI is going to do good in the world. And I'm not the only person who has that kind of thought. A few years ago at the South by Southwest conference, Ray Kurzweil, an American futurist, said artificial intelligence will reach human levels by around 2029. Follow that out further to, say, 2045, and we will have multiplied the intelligence of the human biological machine, of our intelligence, 1 billion-fold. 1 billion-fold increase in the intelligence on this planet. Right? But if, like me, you've ever found yourself saying to your smart speaker, Alexa, add eggs to my shopping list, and it said, I've added pens to your shopping list, you kind of feel like we're some way off 1 billion-fold increase in human intelligence. Now, AI has a lot of potential, but it has a lot of problems as well. In recent years, we've seen some bad applications of it. AI, used by Amazon, was screening candidates for jobs. And a lot of this was computer science jobs, engineers and that kind of thing. Now, the thing is, it was looking at what made a successful candidate previously. It was looking at all of their current candidates and employees and said, this is what a good candidate looks like. Well, a common trait amongst their candidates were, or existing employees, were that they were male. So it started screening out women. So you could be top of Stanford computer science course, you could have been captain of the women's chess team at Stanford University, and the AI would be like, that's all well and good, but sorry, did you say women's chess team? This job's not for you. Which is not ideal. In 2016, Microsoft created a chatbot trained on Twitter data. They kind of fed lots of conversations from Twitter and created a chatbot. And who would have thought that a chatbot created on Twitter data from 2016 would turn out to be racist, misogynistic, and sexist? So it has a lot of problems. Both of these projects were canned, by the way. And we have to be aware when training machine learning algorithms that bias can creep in, as we've just heard about cognitive bias and whatnot. So before I get into how we can use AI for digital marketing, it's probably ideal to have a bit of an explainer about what AI can and can't do. When we talk about AI, we're not talking about general artificial intelligence, which would typically be the kind of terminators of this world, something that acts like a human. No, we're talking about very specialist, task-oriented AIs. It can be broken down into 6 broad categories. Vision, which is an AI that can understand an image. So Google Photos recognizes the Eiffel Tower in your photo, facial recognition, that kind of thing. We have speech, which is voice to text and text to voice. So we can synthesize a voice using AI just from text, but also we can understand what is said, and that's how smart speakers work. We've got expert systems where it can look at data and then kind of make recommendations. We have planning, scheduling, and optimization AIs, which are very much about how do we optimize and get the most out of resources, time, effort, energy. We've got robotics, which is fairly self-explanatory. And then we've got natural language processing, which is where I'll spend quite a bit of time talking today. Natural language processing is a really interesting area. It breaks down into 2 broad categories. Natural language understanding, and that is an AI that can understand the written word. So it can understand sentiment, it can understand intent, it can understand why a joke is funny and explain that. Then we've got natural language generation, which is an AI that can create text from nothing. It can write text from nothing more than a text prompt. Now, lots of these different types of AI are in use today in kind of tools that we use all of the time. For instance, your smart assistant will be using natural language processing, speech, planning, scheduling, optimization, and expert systems. If you've ever used Google Maps or Apple Maps to tell you how to get from A to B, that is using a machine learning system which is built around planning, scheduling, and optimization. In this case, planning, scheduling, and optimization of time. And for those of us who regularly scroll through Netflix, the recommendations that you see on there are all driven by Netflix's own expert system, which is that recommendation engine that recognizes people like you are going to like this. So these kind of applications are out in the world already. These are very common AI, machine learning tools. Some companies have built their own AIs for things like publishing. Bloomberg, one of the biggest publishers in the world, they write 5,000 articles per day, and about a third of them are written entirely by artificial intelligence. Now, for an organization like Bloomberg, that's fairly easy because actually, what is it writing? Most of the articles are things like Boeing Corporation shares rose by 5% at close of play. The earnings call said they beat earnings per share by X amount. It's all very factual. It's just taking numbers and putting them into statements. So it's quite an easy AI to train, actually. Now, most of the organizations in this room today are not Bloomberg. We don't have the resources to create our own AI machine like that. But what we can do is build on top of machine learning tools and AI tools that are publicly available and commercially available. Microsoft, Google, Amazon Web Services, Meta, and Apple have all created a suite of tools that web developers and product managers can build into their products. So, for instance, anyone develop on Microsoft Azure? You can use their vision engine to build it into your product to do things like image detection. And if you've got an app and you want that app to detect maybe different types of birds, you could train their engine to recognize different birds. So people can take a photo and then say, what bird is this, for example. One company on there that you may not have heard of is OpenAI. This is an organization that's kind of part for-profit and part foundation. It's the brainchild of Elon Musk. The goal of OpenAI is to create general artificial intelligence. They're going for the holy grail, which is like a human level, can do everything AI. Not narrow, but very broad and very capable. They've done some interesting things. Last year, they announced a tool called DALL-E. That's a portmanteau of WALL-E, the Pixar character, and Salvador Dali. So that should give you a bit of a hint about what this does. So this is a new area in AI. This is text-to-image generation. That means you can write some text and it will create an image based on what you've said. For instance, you could say, a living room with 2 white armchairs and a painting of the Colosseum. And from nothing, it would create you images of living rooms with 2 armchairs and a painting of the Colosseum. What's particularly interesting about this is look at that painting, or look at the paintings. There was no description of what the painting should be. But the AI has interpreted that in so many different ways. We've got classical, we've got photorealism, we've got pop art, we've got modernist styles. We've got all sorts of different style of painting. And the AI has created a piece of art within a computer-generated image. It can also do the surreal, hence DALL-E. A snail made of a harp. And I think we can all agree that's a lot of snails with the texture of a harp. So very obscure. One of those is auditioning to be on the Guinness advert, I think. See if you can tell which one that is. But then researchers discovered something else as well when they were playing around with this. They found that if you give the prompt some specifics, like a professional high-quality emoji of an evil pig, putting the words professional high quality improved the quality of the output. So being more descriptive in your text prompt resulted in better output. Now, what this all means for creatives in the creative industries is a talk for another day, but it's definitely something that we all need to be aware of. More recently, OpenAI announced an update to DALL-E, which is DALL-E 2. This is interesting in that it now produces more photorealistic images, but it has a new feature which is called in-painting. This is where you can edit an existing image. Let's say you've got a photo or a doodle. You can put the photo in, like this photo here of a museum gallery, and you can say, add a corgi to the painting on the left. And it will add a corgi to the painting on the left, in the style of the painting on the left. Or you can say, add a corgi to the foreground, and it will add a corgi to the foreground, like a real corgi sat on the chair. Or you can say, add a corgi to the painting at the back, and it will add a corgi to the painting at the back. Okay. With no human intervention, the only thing that was given to that AI was the instruction to add a corgi. Google last week announced a tool called Imagine, and this is their version of DALL-E. It's the same principle. This is a cat in a cowboy hat skateboarding on a beach. This is a photorealistic cat in a red jumper wearing sunglasses playing guitar on a mountain. And this is a panda bear with red sunglasses and a leather jacket riding a bike. Because why not? Now, this tool, in fact, but neither of these tools that I've shared with you today are actually publicly available. The OpenAI tools are currently on a very exclusive wait list. And Imagine, Google have actually said they're not releasing it to the public yet because they think it's an interesting research piece, but the potential for harm and misuse is quite high. So until we've kind of worked that out, we're not going to release it. Okay, so there's some interesting, isn't AI weird and wonderful? But what about AI in the real world? Are businesses actually using AI day to day? And that's what this half of the talk is going to be. How can we use AI in our business today with tools that are already available? The State of AI Report 2021 by McKinsey, 57% of respondents said that they were using AI in at least one business function. Whether it's logistics, whether it's sales and marketing, whether it's IT, security, what have you, 57% said they were using it in at least one business function. And of those that said they were using it in sales and marketing, when asked whether it had increased or decreased costs, 86% said AI had decreased costs in sales and marketing. By how much, I hear you ask? By more than 20% was what a third of the audience, of the respondents said. 40% of respondents, I think it's 42%, said that it had reduced costs by between 10 and 20%. So if we can get this right, we can be more efficient with our marketing, we can get more from our resources. So how do we actually go about deploying it? Well, before I take you through some of the tools that I use and I work with my clients to use, I want to just introduce how I think about the kind of digital marketing process. Some of you may be familiar with this. I know that there's at least 2 people in the room that are familiar with this. This is the race planning framework. If you're not familiar with the race planning framework, check out smartinsights.com. RACE is an acronym that stands for Reach, Act, Convert, Engage. Created by Dr. Dave Chaffee. How do we reach people? How do we get them to take an action? How do we convert them to be a customer? And then how do we engage with them such that they become advocates for our business and repeat purchasers? Right? How do we do that? So these are the stages that we must think about. And what I want to do now is take you through some of the tools that I use in order to use AI at different stages throughout the process. So in the reach stage, this is where we're trying to get in front of people, right? I mentioned earlier, OpenAI had created DALL-E. Well, they've also created a natural language generation tool. It's called GPT-3. It's a large language AI model, which basically means it's scanned loads of places on the internet, scanned billions and billions of web pages, read all of the words, and it can now generate text. There's a few different versions or a few different models like this available. OpenAI's GPT-3 is the most popular one, and lots of tools are now being built on top of GPT-3. So if you imagine GPT-3 being like an engine of a car, and an engine manufacturer has gone, here you go, there's the engine, build what you want with it. So lots of software developers have now taken that engine and gone, okay, we're going to build some cool stuff with that. Alternatives to GPT-3 are AI21 and Cohere. Now, these tools will write for you. You can say to them, write me a thing about a thing, and it will write you a thing about a thing. Don't want to bog you down with detail, but fill in the gaps and you'll kind of work it out yourself. So, it augments the writing process. This should not replace the human. Absolutely does not replace the human, because if you just let the AI go crazy, the AI goes crazy. So, human in the loop is essential. That means that humans need to be editing the text. They need to be looking at the text. This is not about replacing humans at all. Human in the loop is a quite a specific term about machine learning and how it works, but I think it applies to the end users here as well. Okay, so let's imagine I am promoting let's say something like a digital marketing conference in Leicester on June, whatever it is. If I wanted to reach people, I might do some social media posts. Now, a problem that a lot of organizations that I speak to have is with social media, particularly SMEs, they feel like creating the content, if they're just trying to have a presence, particularly in small B2B companies, they want to be active, but they don't want to spend forever making lots of content. They don't feel like the reward is great enough. So this is a tool called Predis. You probably can't see that very well there, but what you can do with Predis is you can write a one-line description of a thing. In this example, I've written a description taken straight from the Leicester Digital Live website, and I've just stuck it in here. I've just said, Leicester Digital Live, Premier Digital Marketing Conference, back for 7th year, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then I've said I want it to create a promotional post, an educational post, and a poll. And that's what it's created. So it then creates 3 images with 3 bits of text underneath, and that takes like 10 seconds to create. Now, I should say, when I set up this account, I didn't really set up the brand colors and everything, so if it doesn't look quite right... This is Predis, P-R-E-D-I-S. By the way, there is a link at the end where I'm going to share all the resources and tools that I mentioned. Articles and everything are available, so I will share everything. So this will just create all of the content. If you don't like some of the content, then you just click into give me an alternative image for that post, and it will then give you a bunch of images as an alternative. And then it brings up lots of alternatives that are to be used for hashtag discovery. Okay, right, what else are we going to do to reach people? We're going to do Facebook ads, maybe. Right? Facebook ads, Facebook advertising engine has a very good AI within it that kind of multi-variant tests different creative, yeah? So you can put in different headlines, different images, different descriptions, and it will test all of the different versions to see which one performs best. So that means you've got to create lots of headlines. You've got to create lots of headlines, you've got to create lots of descriptions to add them into your post. That could have somebody sat there writing out lots of headlines and lots of descriptions and thinking of different ways to say the same thing, right? Or you can just stick it in an AI copywriting tool, put a description of your thing in, and then just let it do its work. And what you get is hundreds of different versions of sales messages. Some of them have got emojis. Some of them are a bit boring. Some of them are a bit, ooh, what's that? But the point is, it's giving you lots of options to choose from, and you can then curate the ones that work best for you. It doesn't always get it right, though. Sometimes it goes a little bit off-piste. Now, I don't like this headline, because this conference is about more than just SEO. Act. How do we get people to take an action when they've come to our website? We want them to sign up to our newsletter. We want them to watch that video. We want them to do a thing, right? How do we get them to take an action? Well, this is where we can use an AI tool to do A/B testing and optimization and multivariant tests. This is a fairly kind of standard landing page. I could pick it apart. I'm not going to. I'm just going to use it as an example. It's a landing page with a form and some text. If we wanted to test different elements of this, a tool that I've recently started using is a tool called abtesting.ai. Much like Google Optimize, it can test different elements on your page, and it will run different versions of your page to see which one performs best. What this does at the beginning is it scans the page and says, you've got headlines, image, buttons. These are the key converting elements. Here are some recommendations for what we think you should change. So it will say, change the button from red to green. It will say, change your headline to say something like this. And you can swap out images as you see fit. So then what you end up with is lots of different versions of the same page. And then you end up with multivariate tests. And it will then run the experiments for you to find the optimum outcome. Which one gets the most conversions? And it uses this uses multi-armed bandit to run the experiments. Anyway. Right, what about text on your landing page? There's quite a bit of copy there. If we wanted to write more copy, or if we want to write copy for our landing page, you've probably been sitting there with a blank slate in the past if you do any copywriting going, where do I start? What can I say? Again, AI copywriter. You can see on here I want a landing page with a headline and a description. So I've taken some text that was available, kind of put some bullet points in, and then very quickly I'm able to generate some text with descriptions for my landing page. The good thing about this is I create about 5 or 6 different versions. So I'm not just going, oh, that's one shot. I've got 5 or 6 different versions, all with different tone, with different emphasis, with different styles. And I can cherry pick which ones I want to use. So human in the loop. I'm still choosing what I think works best. I'm not just letting the computer run away with it, but I'm getting copy generated in seconds rather than me sitting there for half an hour getting one version that I'm never quite happy with. So how else can we use AI machine learning tools to improve our website landing pages? This is a tool called Microsoft Clarity. Hands up, anyone using Microsoft Clarity? Few people in the room. Yep, so it's a kind of Google Analytics / Hotjar tool from Microsoft. And it's completely free. So if you use Hotjar, or if you've thought about using Hotjar but didn't want to because of cost or whatever, give this a go. This uses machine learning to tell you about user interactions on your page. So it gives you the kind of analytics where people have come from, what pages they've looked at, but it also says, how many times did people rage click on your page? How many times was there excessive scrolling on your page? How many times did people click on a thing thinking it was an interactive element and they got nothing? So it's giving you insights, and that's what machine learning can do very well. It can give you insights that you might otherwise have missed. Okay, so what about conversion? We've got people in our database, we've got them to our website, we're now in our mailing list. We want them to convert. What can we do? This is, out of all of the tools I'm going to talk about today, this is the only one I haven't actually used yet. Right, this is a tool called Persado. Persado is a motivational AI. It will rewrite copy on your website and on your emails and on anywhere else that you've got copy, but it will tailor it for each individual user. So if you're in the CRM of a company and you go to their website, maybe you've bought from them in the past, or it's got you grouped and tagged as someone like this, it will change the copy on the landing page to motivate you specifically. This isn't just random A/B testing. We want to test this headline to that headline. This is saying, we think this word is going to motivate you to take action rather than someone else. For example, for fall, select sweaters on sale. Hannah sees you've found your new wardrobe staple. Chris sees from us to you 30% off. So different messages for different people based on previous interactions. Anybody in here working sales? Hands up. A couple. Yeah, a few. Okay, so if you work in sales, this is a cool tool, crystalnose.com. This is, if anyone's familiar with DISC profiles, DISC personality profiles, this is an AI that kind of reads people's LinkedIn profiles and then says, we think this person is DISC personality type such and such, and this is how you should communicate with them, and this is how they operate in the world. It's incredible for hiring and for sales. Very powerful tool. I've been using it for about since 2016. It's scary accurate at times. I've got some weird stories about this tool when I've been doing sales calls. But you can see this is Elon Musk, and one thing it's spotted about Elon Musk is it says, what comes naturally to Elon gets frustrated if someone is late to a meeting. What it didn't say is, or if they work from home. It's got a Chrome plugin, this tool. So as you browse LinkedIn and see people's profiles, it will tell you their personality on the sidebar and tell you a bit about them. What's really cool, though, is if you then go to email that person, it gives you coaching in your email to talk about how to write to them. So this person prefers an email that starts with hi rather than dear. It wants you to be more formal. It wants you to sign off with a casual ending rather than a really forceful, heavy sales approach. It wants you to be softer rather than more direct. So it's giving you coaching for the communication preference of the individual you're writing to. And then finally, in the engage section, we have personalization at scale. So this is a tool that I use for my newsletter. It's a tool called Rasa.io. Rasa is where you have a curated newsletter. So every 2 weeks on my newsletter, I pull together 20 or 30 links that I think are interesting to my audience. Everyone in my newsletter receives 8 of those links. Which 8? Well, based on what they've interacted with in the past, what topics they've shown an interest in, Rasa will create a personalized email specifically for them. So that's quite a powerful tool. You can see an example of the newsletter there, and then some examples of the topics that come up in my newsletter. That's a really powerful tool. My open rates are around 50% for my newsletter. Before I started personalizing, they were about 30%. So just by having more personalized, relevant content, I'm getting more engagement, and that's generally the case across the board with everyone I know that uses Rasa. So a really powerful tool for offering personalization at scale. So just wrapping up, if you're interested in marketing AI technology, check out the Marketing AI Institute. I'm not affiliated with them in any way other than I'm speaking at their conference in August. But the Marketing AI Institute has blogs, courses, and webinars all about how you can use marketing with artificial intelligence. And if you want some further resources, QR code coming up, so if you've got a phone and you want the resources, now's the time to get it out. You can head over to this section where links to all of the tools that I've talked about today are available. You can sign up to my newsletter, connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for listening. That's AI for Marketing.
Excellent. So I'm not sure whether we've got very many questions at the moment. What do you think has made the biggest difference to your day-to-day processes? What software, what type of software has made the biggest difference? Because you basically do digital marketing for other people like us, really, don't you? And so.
Yeah. So I'm helping teams implement tools as well. So day to day, I mean, the biggest game changer for me is just OpenAI, GPT-3, the playground, being able to just create all the content I create now, even sales emails or any kind of replies to customer, automated replies to customer queries or something like that. If you're looking at a chatbot, I typically run it through an AI just to get the tone of voice right. I'll put in what I want, but then try to craft it. Because what I find is my own writing style is very much me consistently, and that isn't right for clients. And I need it to sound more, might be more corporate or more informal or what have you. And being able to use GPT-3 directly in the OpenAI playground is fantastic. From an SEO perspective, there was one tool that I didn't mention today, which is called Market Muse, which is a game changer for me.
Do you want to write that in the chat for the other guys as well?
Yeah, so
All our co-speakers are putting lots and lots and lots of comments in the chat, so we're going to have to catch up with some of those. Yeah, Jono's just put it in. Thank you, Jono. So yeah, so what does Market Muse do then?
So Market Muse does what's the best way of describing it? You want to rank for a particular keyword or a particular topic. It's going to crawl those existing ranking articles and then tell you the themes and topics that the content talks about. So
which is very similar to what InLinks does. So interestingly, if you haven't looked at InLinks, it might be worth.
I did wonder about that because I didn't catch the InLinks talk, so I'm interested to watch that one. Because
Dixon's just said it's much better. Really would do, but I have used it, so I can vouch for that.
Interesting, great. Well, I mean, I will absolutely be checking out InLinks then. Yeah, so it sounds like we're going to find out about a very similar tool shortly, but yeah, it's about, you know, natural language processing, understanding what are the associated topics, and if you want to rank, you're not just talking about topic X, you've got to talk about these related topics.
Yeah, so a classic one would be if you're trying to sell, you know, a loan for car finance, or you know, you'd have some sort of calculator, and there'll be all the other terms around there like APR and all the other things that associated.
Yeah,
the other
PCP, hire purchase, yeah, all of those associated phrases that you need to include and you need to cover in some depth.
So let's go through some questions then, because the team have started to ask some nice, interesting things. So yeah, so Dixon, some of us didn't, some of the speakers didn't actually see your talk because, of course, they were speaking in the other stream. Because the other thing was we had everybody in the main audience in the morning, and Martin's was in the talks of today were in the afternoon, and they were in two separate rooms. So half the audience was there. So what are your thoughts on AL, ML systems interacting? In other words, getting GPT-3 to write prompts for DALL-E 2. So that's a question from Jono. So basically, do you want to interpret that question and give us an answer of what you think about it?
Yeah, so GPT-3, as I described, is the large language model from OpenAI, and DALL-E is the image generation tool. The DALL-E tool is actually trained and built on GPT-3. So the way that DALL-E works is it's basically trained on two models. It's kind of a creation between natural language understanding through GPT-3, so it understands words, but then it's been trained on a kind of image recognition system to be able to understand. It's been trained on, I think it was 650 million images, maybe more. I can't remember the exact figure. So it understands faces, birds, concepts, artists, and all these other different ways of tagging photos. So yeah, I mean, I think using GPT-3 to create prompts is really interesting. There was one point in the talk where I was saying about what's the impact on creative industries here. And if you think about using GPT-3 to write prompts for something like DALL-E, it's not unfeasible to think that people are going to start writing pieces of fiction heavily created using GPT-3. So you just inputting the prompt, getting GPT-3 to give you a paragraph or a page of text, editing that, and then using that to inform the next prompt, and so on. You could create children's stories, and then you could take the text from that story, put it in DALL-E. You could create images from DALL-E, and then you basically use that as a print on demand. I guarantee people are going to start doing that very soon.
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes you a bit scary because when I've talked about AI and machine learning at work and talked about it from a sort of a threat to our industry, our initial conversation was, it's only the algorithms. It's just going to make it, the PPC, paid search, Facebook, etc. We just have to learn to work around them. And the creative guys are sitting there thinking, this doesn't affect us. But I think DALL-E 3 actually, it could have a massive impact. And the nice thing that we found when we started experimenting was there's a lot of really crappy, routine, large-scale jobs like titles and descriptions that you can just, and product descriptions where you've got to do masses and masses, and it's really expensive. And you can turn this around really quickly, and it's very effective. As long as you've got a human intervening to choose which one you go with, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important part. I was at an event last week and they were talking about, previously it was thought that AI would, that the last thing to be impacted by creative industries would be the creative, the creative industry would be the last thing to be impacted by AI. And the kind of manual labor industries would be the first thing to be disrupted. And actually what they're finding is it's a complete reversal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, let's talk a bit more about the technology. So could you just repeat what Crystal Knows means? Was that the sales one? Yeah,
so Crystal and Crystal Knows, that's the tool that I've been using the longest actually out of all of these. It's a profile kind of analyzer, and it uses, if anyone's familiar with any kind of personality testing, there's one called DISC. If you've ever done DISC types, you know, as a hiring manager, you might have done it for incoming members, or you might have done it for your team and worked out team dynamics. And basically, Crystal Knows uses LinkedIn profiles to pinpoint people's DISC personality type. And then if you're a sales rep, you can have this as a Chrome extension, go on somebody's profile, and it will then kind of coach you about how best to address them, or how best to reach out to them, how best to engage them in the meeting that you're having with them. So, you know, some people might want lots and lots of detail, so be very, very detailed. Other people are very high level. Give them big picture, give them the kind of potential, what it can do, not the nitty gritty about how it does it kind of thing. And it's very interesting. I've had some, as I mentioned in the talk, some bizarre instances where I've gone, that was scarily accurate.
Yeah, actually, Dixon said something interesting in the same line. He says, has anyone felt creeped by getting a message that hit the mark a bit too closely? He also asked, is it expensive, Crystal Knows? Is it a free plugin into Chrome?
$30 a month.
Okay. And then Market Muse we talked about. There have been software, I think Reich or something like that. And there was another one a few years back that used to do exactly what you were describing. It used to basically scrape the top 10 websites for a specific key phrase, which is what you were describing, Market Muse. We'll see InLinks in a bit, which is really, really interesting. Is there another one that sales reps use, or was that the Crystal Muse one? Is there another one for understanding and profiling?
So that was Crystal Knows for the sales specific.
Yeah.
For the personalization, it might be the Pasado one that came up, which was the kind of emotional AI, which was more about your marketing messaging in landing pages and subject lines.
And is that dynamic? You know how you get so what's that doing then? Is it using some form of JavaScript and then some alternative text that you've written in the background, so when somebody of a certain personality type it inserts that, or is it done more on the fly?
So that one is done, it will connect. I must say it's the only one that I haven't actually used. So I'm going purely off what I've seen on their talks and having spoken to their team. That one they have different levels of the product. At the kind of entry level, they have something that will tell you, you can put in an ad headline or a subject line, and it will tell you the likelihood to convert, or which one's likely to have the biggest impact before you send it. So it's kind of A/B testing before you actually send it. So it's quite good at doing that. They've got lots and lots of data that can say these tend to have a bigger impact. Where it gets more interesting is where you connect it into your CRM and your database, and it's able to see your real users and understand what's driving each individual. So again, it's kind of similar to the crystal nose thing in that it's building up a profile somehow. Don't know how it's doing it, but it's building up a profile of each individual in your database. What's driving them, what's motivating them, and then it's tailoring the messaging to them on the fly.
Yeah, interesting. We're working with a joint project to deliver data integration services. Our partners in South Africa, and the new service is Digital Science, and it uses CRM data in various different ways, like bringing it back into analytics or bringing it back into Google AdWords or Facebook, etc., for doing various different things. And one aspect of it is when you've got people that are logged in, so you know who they are, and then you can create personalized content for them. So I think if we can link that to the, so that's sort of like, this is sort of phase 2 of that. If you can then use AI based on their personality profiles, I think that's going to be really interesting. And the less control we've got of things like cookies, and the more first-party data and CRM system data we need to use, I think the more sophisticated this will become. So, for example, you were talking about emails. A lot of emails are automated from workflows in things like HubSpot and Marketo. So if that can be created by AI, that's going to take a lot of the pain out of the work of doing a lot of that stuff. So, yeah, some really interesting things going on.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting potential with AI. One thing that we have to be aware of is that if we start introducing, or if we start relying on kind of off-the-shelf products like, I don't know, let's take Market Muse or Passado or any of the other ones that we've spoken about today, it's ideal if we can see how they're building their models and how they're training their models, because otherwise you can get this kind of reinforcement. So you get these self-fulfilling prophecies. And we need to make sure that data is based on real. You can imagine, for instance, OpenAI creating a large language model. Fast forward 5 years, when half of the internet product pages, landing pages, product descriptions have suddenly been created by AIs because they're easier. Well, all of a sudden they're being trained on data created by AIs, so you end up with
I see what you mean. And the trouble is that so much content is duplicated anyway. If you're a manufacturer, all your resellers use the same content, so there's not going to be any imagination built in there. There's a couple of interesting points being made. So let me just get Dixon's going to come on. Actually, Dixon, if you want to turn your camera on now, actually you can join in, because we're going to you're going to be speaking next anyway. James from our tech SEO and analytics team is asked about how catch up. See what's going on. Yeah, I think that's what you were talking about. How they can.
He's mentioning GANs there, generative adversarial networks, which is basically 2 different AI models that work against each other in order to produce an outcome. Is the kind of the shorthand version of describing that. He's mentioned there about using an AI to some AI projects create an AI which produces and a critique AI which tries to catch it out. Yeah, so it's a way of kind of, you can use it for avoiding reinforcement within the data.
And Kate's asking about CRM integrated intelligence. Apologies. I'm not sure whether that's what I was talking about. I've not heard it called that before, which I think is quite an interesting term. So CRM integrated intelligence, I think what I was talking about was using first-party data within CRM systems to go backwards to the source of the lead, or to the source, to the individual, and join those dots. But I'm not sure where she's picked up CRM integrated intelligence from. So
I think I might have just
maybe you might be able to ask that question again, because Martin will hang around to answer a few more. And then Dixon said that was a good point about knowledge graphs, which leads in. And then Jono's saying, it's this idea that eventually the whole web will be written by AI, learning from AI, which I think is quite an interesting observation. And we're just coming up to 10 o'clock, and I need to pass over to Dixon. Is there anything you want to add? Any last parting comments, Martin? Is there anything like a newsletter people can sign up to? I know you speak regularly on this subject and you've got a great newsletter. Do you want to just put the link in for that, or do you want to add any?
Yes. So I would check out the link that I shared. I'll pop it in again just for anyone that did miss it. At the top of there is a link to join the newsletter, and you can read my blog and find out all of the resources that I've shared today on that page.
Well, thank you very much. Now, before we go on to the next speech, I'm going to do this after each speech. What we're doing is we are raising money for Ukraine. So I'm going to bring up the little pop-up. So if any of you would like to donate to Ukraine as a way of thanking Martin for his first tip, we'll bring this up thing. If you just click on it and then close it, it will open up in another browser. And then also I'm going to put our review up, but if you want to specifically mention thanks for the great seminar, thanks for all the useful information from Martin, so Martin gets some credit as well, that would be great. If you want to just click up on that one, that would be really helpful. Cool. Thank you so much, Martin. Great to see you again. Martin and I have known each other for many years because we both have been trainers. I think you still are on the e-business club and now the digital growth program. That's probably worth putting a link in as well, because I know that you guys are doing more stuff. And we'll just get Dixon's video ready. Thanks, Martin. See you soon. Hi, Dixon, you're here.
Hi, guys. Yes, I found myself a better place, but I am in a slightly public area, so let's hope I don't cause anybody too much problems, but should be fine. Yeah.
So let's start with the video straight away. It's 24 minutes, and then that'll give us lots of time for us to do a bit of a demo, because you didn't talk about your software that much in the talk.
It's because I get embarrassed about talking about my own products and on somebody else's show. So, but you've given me carte blanche now, so
I did, and it was interesting. We had a conversation about this, that very, very few conferences allow the guests or the delegates to actually see really good pieces of software, and I think it's a great approach. I wish other people had done it before. So let's fire it up.
Anyway, let's see the video.
Yeah, turn your mic off, otherwise we'll get an echo.
So my name is Dixon Jones. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to be talking today about building topical authority through leveraging user intent. And for us at InLinks, it's a very interesting subject to talk about, because we think that people have been doing it, I wouldn't say wrong, but I think that there's a new way in which we can look at user intent. So we're going to be talking about how to build knowledge graphs without having to do code or anything like that, the concept of knowledge graphs, and why having the skill can give you a marketing edge, I think. And then we're going to look at how to optimize your own knowledge graph and use that to enhance your keyword research and your approach to keyword research. So I'm Dixon Jones, as Anne said. And I've been around for, in the industry since about 1999. Yes, marketing director of Majestic, and now InLinks is something that we set up about 3 years ago. It's already won, a good SEO Technology of the Year award, an AI Technology of the Year award. So quite pleased with where we are so far. And we're going to talk about these three things, which we already mentioned. And if anybody wants a book, I've got a couple of spare ones. Just given one away, and Eden asked for a signature, so thank you. She didn't know who I was before I got the book, though, so let's be honest. I'm going to start with a bit of disambiguation. As I go through the presentation, I'm not really one for TLAs, three-letter abbreviations, and so I do tend to mix my synonyms a little bit. So for me, a topic is very, very similar to an entity, which is very similar to an idea, which is very similar to a thing. A topic map, a knowledge graph, and a topic wheel, I kind of use all of these things interchangeably just because I use them a lot. So when you hear me and I say a word that's odd, just, think about what I'm trying to say behind it. And as I say, I'm going to start with user intent.
because I think that SEOs have got user intent. Not wrong, but we should have moved on. So if you type in horseshoe, then you don't find what SEOs traditionally are talking about when they talk about what the meaning is of user intent. We're talking about the user intent of a person on Google that's trying to search for something. So if you type in user intent to the search engines, some people in this room, one over there, Moz, Wikipedia, probably one of my own organizations as well, we're all to blame. We describe user intent in one of four things. We say it's intentional intent, or informational, navigational, transactional, or commercial intent. For some reason, we've broken the idea of user intent into these 5 very simplistic concepts. And SEOs have been doing that for years. All of the search results are saying that's what we understand by user intent. Wikipedia is saying those things, even though in its very first sentence, it identifies that user intent is identification and categorization of what a user online intended or wanted to find. That, to me, doesn't sound like one of 4 things. When you go as a user onto Google, you want more than one of 4 things. And the truth is that when I type in horseshoe, Google is already, don't try and do that with an I, by the way. Google is trying to understand concepts already about horseshoes. So it's already seeing, well, okay, this searcher might be looking about horseshoe crabs, or horseshoe lake, or horseshoe pass, because I was in Wales when I did the search, or horseshoe inn. So there's all these different concepts, these entities that Google is saying, you might be thinking about one of those things. In fact, it doesn't even suggest horseshoe, as in, a farrier's favorite piece of kit. So I think that SEOs have misunderstood user intent, and we have now the opportunity to do something about that. So we've tried to do some stuff about that. The truth is, though, that without context, Google's core index, which is kind of really the results on the right there, goes straight to the heart of the matter. So if it doesn't know where you are, it doesn't know why you're typing in horseshoes, doesn't know anything else, it's got these core results, of course, and it's got Wikipedia at the top. It's got, a couple of farriers in there, and it's kind of got the right sort of idea without any context. On the left-hand side, it knew I was in Wales or wherever I was, and it's saying, well, there's a pub with the horseshoes there. It's got some identities over here of it's either a fabricated product, normally made of metal, or a game, horseshoes, which you play when you don't want to give your kids darts. So it started to come up with these entities. And I think this is how Google is looking at intent. As we start to search for something as a user, Google is trying to understand that little snippet of what you're typing in and anything it knows about you to try and understand what it is that you want. When you type in house, do you want to buy the house? Do you want to sell the house? Do you want to decorate the house? Do you want information about house prices? Do you want a mortgage? There's so many different things, but it isn't just informational, navigational, transactional, etc. So without context, Google gets wrong. We don't want, if we're a farrier, we don't want to look like a pub, and if we're a pub, we don't want to look like a farrier. And this is very important because when it comes to keyword research and keyword thinking, we start to look at things in terms of how many people typed in a particular phrase, any particular day, week, month, year, whatever it may be. And really, it's about how many times somebody is looking for a thing, how many times somebody is looking for an idea. So, knowledge graphs help Google to understand this. They kind of come up with a way of identifying the world almost in numbers, and this number means this thing, this number means this person, this number means this place. And really, when I talk about topics and entities and ideas, really they're just ideas that Google says, right, this is the number for this idea. So what does a knowledge graph look like? This is a knowledge graph. This was in my local pub, talking about horseshoes, or horseshoe fools. This is a poster that's on the wall in the local pub, and it is really representing a knowledge graph of beer. So we've got a knowledge graph here of beer, and within that, German lager is associated with with Keller beer and Vienna lager, and European lager comes out of the main lager category. It's got all these connections between different ideas. And I think that's an easier way to look at a knowledge graph when you see it in a poster like that. And that's when I kind of started thinking, now I kind of get what this knowledge graph stuff is about. And I've started to get into all this thought processing. So the point of the matter is that if you want to be an expert in your subject matter, then you really need to be talking about all the topics and entities that are important to that subject. Not because there's lots of keywords around them, not because that you have to cover every base of every idea, but because you need to cover the concepts that will allow you to demonstrate that you're an authority to customers, to users, to Google. So how do you go about building a knowledge graph? Actually, building a knowledge graph in theory isn't very difficult. And I'm going to show you how to do it. You don't necessarily need tools. You can use all sorts of tools to get there. Building it quickly and reliably is quite difficult, though. So you can take any search engine. Hey.com just come out. He's got a search engine. I've taken Majestic, not really a very good search engine. It's more of a other kind of tool. But anyway, most people take Google. I just wanted to put a different one up there. You can say, right, what are the 10 most effective pages, most powerful bits of content I can find around any topic? So what did I choose here? Things to do in Japan. So we can take 10 pages that are your seed set for the authorities for the concept of things to do in Japan. It could be Wikipedia, it could be anything. The top 10 web pages in Google tends to do the trick. And then you can go through all of that content and look at the underlying concepts or ideas. So you can use that. You can either go through manually, of course. You could go through and read it and say, yep, that person's talked about this. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about that. And people do. Alternatively, you can speed that process up. There's 4 ways that I know of doing that without costing any money. They use what's called a NLP algorithm or a natural language processing algorithm. Sometimes it's called, Google calls it their Google AI. Technically, it's a named entity extraction algorithm. Doesn't matter, didn't mean to scare you with words. The point is you put in a page and it will read it. This is using IBM Watson's. I've also put up here, Google's got one, TextRaiser have one, who are in France, and InLinks has one, of course, as well. And what it does is it reads that content and it breaks it down to the underlying entities or concepts. And you can then use that to map out your top 10 web pages, how many times they've talked about all the different ideas. So if we're going back to the beer idea, I don't know why I flipped from Japan to beer. Oh, Japan beer. Anyway, yes. So we've got, if you want to be an expert in beer, you probably need to talk quite a lot about beer. That would make sense. It might not be so obvious that you want to talk about malt or flavor or styles or hops or lager. So you've got ideas that scale down from the core idea, core concept of this case of beer. And you start to manipulate that idea. So you can imagine putting that into an Excel spreadsheet so that you realize that you have to talk more about styles of beer than you have to talk about alcohol content. Unless, of course, your business is about not drinking beer, in which case alcohol content is probably a much more important idea for you. In which case, maybe you're not talking about beer, maybe you're talking about health. And we'll get onto some of the categories that we have there in a moment. So you need to tabulate those results and do it in Excel if you can, but this is where InLinks kind of comes into its own, because you can start to build knowledge graphs very, very quickly and start to work out connections between ideas. So I took a beer website. I can't remember which beer website I took. Put it into the system, and this is the knowledge graph it's turned out. Technically, it's a topic wheel, so it's basically lots of topics. Each of these topics around the edge here relates back to a Wikipedia article, to something that we can physically understand, a concept that we can understand. To be honest with you, I've got it in English, but the concept of malt or style is a concept regardless of the language. We've got it in a number in Wikidata as well. So we've got all these concepts in here, and we've also categorized a little of them. And in this particular example, we've taken something where we haven't actually written about anything yet. So we now haven't talked about any of those ideas on our website, but you can immediately start seeing what ideas you're going to need to talk about if you're going to become an expert in beer. So we can then present that in a way that humans can understand. It's sometimes easier to see than a graph, but we can go quite a bit further as well. So we can dive into to a particular section. We can sit there and say, well, actually, we're a food and beverage company, so probably these ones over here, beer, brewing, flavor, pale ale, etc., are more important concepts. Make sense so far? Hopefully. And then inside we've got categories of topics as well. So we can present the data in that way, but we should ask, why do this? Why do you want to build a knowledge graph? How can it give you a marketing edge? Well, I think there's quite a few different ways, and the ones that stand out to me is that your site structure can then be built around knowledge graphs. It can be built around the concepts and how they connect together. So if you've got the concept of beer and you have a worldwide knowledge graph, then you can sit there and say, well, if you're going to talk about beer, then things like food and beverages, you might want to talk about casseroles recipes or malt liquor or other things up here. And I noticed that here we've got beer in Japan is a concept that's independent of beer that is semantically close to the concept of beer. So maybe I want to talk about beer in Japan within a section of my now almost well-written website on beer. So it allows us to give better. I can't read my notes, so I'm having to look behind me a little bit. The thing that we've then been able to do then is say, right, now we can come up with much better research, an approach to content to keyword research than we have all been doing in the past. We hope. The world will tell. But what we've done is we've tried to come up with a proactive way of doing keyword research that includes topic clustering. There was stuff on topic clustering before, which was very good from Ahrefs, but I think we have a different approach to the way we cluster. In fact, everything that we're doing is a different approach. We'll have to find out whether it's a good approach. It's got keyword relevance, so we can work out, if somebody types in, if you know that lots of people type in bridge or type in tower, that doesn't really matter if those words are together and it's a tower bridge they're interested in. We're not interested in the volume of people typing in bridges. We're not interested in the volume of people typing in towers. We're interested in how many people are interested in tower bridge. So we need to work out the relevance of any keyword to a concept as well. We can also use this kind of idea to remove irrelevant suggestions. So what we're trying to do is build some keyword ideas, group them and topically group them. Then we're going to use Google Suggest, in fact, to remove the irrelevant ideas, get more from Google Suggest, drop the ones that are relevant. In the example I used at the start, horseshoe falls, not relevant if you're a farrier. We'll get rid of those ones because they're not going to be relevant. And then we can then feed those back into Google Suggest, get some more ideas. And then hopefully we can build a content plan that is going to be specific to you, to your business, to your web page, to your ideas. And we know that it's built on ideas that we hopefully, as content writers, can understand. So the principle of a keyword research is to extract the topics through any pages, through NLP, cluster a seed set of keywords. And then what we're doing is we're piloting auto-suggest with natural language processing. So we're reading Google's auto-suggest and running the same natural language processing over that content as well to understand the underlying concepts that Google is spitting out as suggestions. We can also from there curate questions and keywords, and then they're assessed hopefully with respect to the clusters that we've built and with respect to the competition. And then we have one extra really interesting bit at the end, which I think also takes it back to the user intent thing that I opened with. But before I get to there, we've then come up with keyword research, which is at its core clustered and categorized. So if we wanted to do keyword research around renewable energy, for example, then yes, we've got some ideas of the number of keyword variations. We've got some idea of search volume. We even use the idea of transactional, navigational, local, etc. But we've seen that this is mostly a local result. In other words, people are interested in renewable energy in their area, it would appear, but only 54% of the time. So really, that whole idea of navigational, transactional falls out the window. Much better is, if you want to be an expert in renewable energy, you probably should talk about, energy storage or offshore energy or energy or wind energy. So you've got these ideas that you can maybe get right, maybe get wrong, maybe they're not right for your business. Maybe the fact that GE Energy is a big business that's ranking at the top 10 for renewable energies doesn't affect your world one iota. Fine, get rid of it. But the point is that once you've come into something like energy storage, you can then see all the topics that are appropriate within there. So you don't then write a page for every single keyword. You can sit there and say, right, energy storage, I need a page on energy storage, and these ideas are the things I've got to talk about. Or alternatively, if I'm writing one page on renewable energy, I've got to make some decisions about where I stop talking and where I start talking about topics and where I stop. So then we've got this keyword research, and then the second thing that we've got is user intent. And this user intent, I think, changes the game quite a bit, because what we've also analyzed is the verb in Google Suggest. So rather than just analyzing the concepts themselves, we can now say, right, there's a whole load of keywords and questions in relation to renewable energy where people want to use renewable energy. Totally different to building your renewable energy or complaining about your solar panels about to be in the field next to you. So we can see what kind of questions are related to where people are talking about using renewable energy, which I think is much more useful for us as content writers than it is to know whether they want to buy it or not. I want to just finish by wrapping up what I was trying to get across. The most important thing I want to start to get across is that intent, user intent, Google users, when they're typing something in, is much more than whether they're coming across and asking for a transactional or informational type of query. They're really looking for something useful to their world. And knowledge graphs are really just a list of topics or a topic map that measures the frequency, sometimes the connectedness of different ideas. Every website has a unique knowledge graph. Your website is unique to you. It's like a fingerprint. And if you're going to build out a knowledge graph, whether it's one you've already got on your website or whether it's one you want to develop as a profile for your business, you can do that from a corpus of content. You can take the best of breed content, you can analyze the information that's being talked about in there, break it down to the underlying topics, and then rebuild it in your own words with your own flair, your own knowledge patterns on top of it. Rest assured that you're covering the most important topics that are going to be needed. However, doing it fast and at scale, and importantly, trying to do it consistently, needs machines. Because as humans, as Kenda would tell you, you'll read a page of text, a sentence in one thing, and then you'll read the next sentence, and it may mention the same idea, but you won't know that it's mentioned the same idea. You'll blank one of those out. So it's not going to be reliable if you do it consistently as a human. So there are increasing numbers of machines out there that are doing this natural language processing extraction, which doesn't have to be scary, but does have to be something that will allow us to speed up our SEO work as content writers. We can then categorize pages which are underrated by SEOs. So we can use this process to work out whether we've got enough content, enough topics covered in any web page. We can build our content around topic maps rather than around keywords. And I think in future, I hope in future, we're going to think that topics will drive all keyword research as well. And I think that's just about me. If you do want the book, I have written a book. I've got a couple. Come and find me, ask a question, and I'll happily give you the first two that I've got to go out.
I'm not going to let you go yet.
All right, or I'll take a question then.
No, well, I'm going to give you a question because everybody else has given the opportunity to explain the benefits of InLinks.
Right. Yeah.
Software, and you haven't. So there's one part of your software which I really, really like, and that's when you audit specific pages and then you can play around with the text.
So this is built in into the heart of this part of what we've written is built into the heart of the tool. So the tool itself also uses entities. I'll come back to your one in just a second, but I'll cover the other two things that it does as well. It also uses entities to identify where you're talking about different topics, and it'll automate the internal linking of concepts as well. So you can sit there and say, right, this is the page about beer in Japan, and every other time that you've mentioned beer in Japan around the website or Japanese beer, hopefully it'll pick up those variations, then it'll link through so you reduce any cannibalization. You help the user and the search engine get to the point of topical authority within your website for any particular concept. It'll also write some schema, particularly content schema on the fly as well, and put that and inject that into your page as well. But then we also use this idea of understanding entities to help you optimize a piece of content. And this is built, what I've been talking about here is built into the new version of that, where you can start by saying, right, I want beer in Japan. It'll sit there, and if you've already got a page on beer in Japan, it'll read the top 10 search results for beer in Japan, extract and build a knowledge graph of those 10 pages, all of the things they're talking about. Then it'll compare that to a knowledge graph of all the topics you've got in your page, so you can identify where you're over and underperforming in any particular concept or idea. But then now what we've just built into here is that the keyword section, which before was just a list of here's some keyword ideas that you might want to include, it now builds into this idea and in real time goes and starts digging into Google to really bring out a content plan of these are the topics that this page, if you were writing from scratch, would work for. So you want to have section on Japan and its environment and why that's good for beer. Then you need to talk a little bit about beer itself. Then you need to talk about export licenses to beer in Japan or whatever it is. So it builds out a content plan which hopefully is meaningful to the human, and we know it's already meaningful enough for us to put out, subject to a good content writer, of course, put out content that Google is going to understand and respect. Did that answer your question in there? Well, if you don't, go to InLinks.net and go for a free account. It's free. You can do your first 20 pages for free anyway. Go to InLinks.net. I'd encourage you to do it. We're pretty new out the gates, but we've got about 6,000 or 7,000 people using the free version of it now. We've got enough people for us to be paying ourselves some money, so that's good. So we got off the ground, and I think we're going to be around for quite a long time. I hope so anyway. At least the concepts that underlie it. If somebody comes out with a better way of doing what we've done, good luck to them, but they need a knowledge graph first. Thank you, guys.
Can you hear me, Dixon?
I can. How are you doing?
Good. So I love your product, but we don't use it enough, mainly because we haven't sort of fully trained and we've got quite a new team. So instead of answering some questions, maybe I could disappear and you could do a bit of a demo. So can you see how you can share your screen?
Yeah, no problem. Let's do that.
And I'll turn my camera off. I'm going to keep my mic on.
That's fine. You can see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
if everybody, if you want to make it bigger, if you hover over the top right, there's a little arrow and you can make it the whole screen so that you can see the screen in a bit.
Okay, so I'm going to try and do this a little quicker, but if anybody does want a one-to-one demo, if they go to inlinks.net/p/demo, then there's a sort of calendar there and you can get with one of the team and have a one-on-one. But what I wanted to just do is pick out a few bits. Martin was asking about a bit, but and also Anicca, I'll show you guys the content part as well. What I thought I'd do is I jump into DixonJones.com. But essentially, we do a bunch of different things here. We help people improve their content, we help people improve their internal links, and we help people write some schema. So if I go into DixonJones.com, which is not really a commercially important website, but it's created on the page on how to change your Twitter handle. It's gone and found 27 other pages where I'm talking about Twitter, and it's linked through to the Twitter handle page because I've made that about the topic of Twitter. It's also linking out to 3 other pages on that page as well, so I can see the content on there that it's linking out to, and that's all embedded in the system because we use JavaScript on the page to embed the links. And it's also created some schema around it, so it's saying that hey, this page is about a concept called Twitter, and in case you don't know what that is, Mr. Search Engine, here's the Wikipedia page for Twitter. It also mentions publishing and HQs and some other bits.
And can I just stop you there, because the important bit that it took me to understand was when you choose a target topic, you can't just type in PPC agency or marketing agency less. It's got to be an entity. So could you just explain that?
Absolutely.
That's
so
really
let's go to this. Let's go to this one down here about chess, for example. So, in fact, I've got one that I just was creating a little earlier on around. So I have a page about chess on my own website, and since I'm currently at the chess championships, so I can set a target for this page. So I could say, right, I want this page to rank for something. And these are all the entities that we've seen this page to be about. It's a very short page, and it's about these kind of concepts. And I can select from the list. I also this is the result of our own natural language processing algorithm, but we also run Google's as well over the same content, and then we can pick something from the list. And what it's got to be, it really should be an entity. So for us, it's fine if we do that. Then we know what Wikipedia page we're talking about when we're talking about chess, because it relates to the Wikipedia page. So what will happen now is it'll create the schema around that. So a human in the loop is very, very important, as Martin said earlier on. And now you've got a human in the loop saying, yes, this page is primarily, I want this page to be about chess. So in the process of doing that, it can go and read the other content, and it can say, right, now that I've seen this is about chess, I've created some schema to say, hey, this is about a concept called chess.
And can you just, so remember, we've got a few real beginners. So, and I know that Jono's going to be presenting in a minute, and he's going to talk about schema in quite a lot of detail. So can you just introduce the concept of schema for the beginners?
Okay, so the thing is, you don't need to look at all that. All you need to do is say this is about a thing called chess, and it's done for you. That's the whole point here. So the schema here that we're creating is specific to the content on the page itself. There's other types of schema which Jono will talk about quite a bit, but understanding the content of a web page and then being able to write some schema about it this takes it from a skilled activity to a point and click activity. You literally say
so when we're talking about the schema, this is code that you can't see on the page, but it's actually hidden behind there, like a description, a meta description is there.
Yeah,
so it's telling it, but the users don't.
It's turning the main concepts into some very specific concepts that Google understands, that a search engine can understand. And we do that by using Wikipedia as an intermediary. So Google has its own knowledge graph with an ID number for every concept in the world. InLinks has an ID number for every concept in the world. We don't use their ID number because their ID numbers change. What we do is we use the Wikipedia page because we know that Google and InLinks both understand the Wikipedia page. So by
use it as a bridge.
Yes, so by saying this Wikipedia page over here, or this Wikipedia article over here is what I mean. When I'm talking about this idea, I'm talking about this idea which is explained in Wikipedia. That gives us another human in the loop because, of course, humans are curating the Wikipedia page. So there is potential for bias. If you look at peers, for example, peers in Wikipedia, Brighton Pier might come up as an entity, but the much more important pier on Addis Ababa in Ethiopia is not mentioned because nobody in Wikipedia ever thought to put up an entity on that pier, which is probably a much more important pier, especially if we're going to have
And can I just so the advantage of using your software is once you've got the JavaScript, you almost upload this content, and so that page will now be tagged with this schema information. But when you go into the audit, you can do more than that, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just sort of dealing with the internal linking and the schema, which is automated. But we have added humans in the loop when it comes to actually the content on the page. So I ran this whilst Martin was speaking on this page about chess, which I've never optimized. I've just tried to audit it for the phrase online chess, and I've come out with this terrible score of 1%. So let's go into it and see what I've done. And I had to run it in the background because it had to do quite a lot of work to work about it. So this is the page that I've got. So now what it's done is it's pulled this into a sort of a WYSIWYG editor so that you can edit this content. This isn't updating in live on your website now, but you can change it here. So you can sit there and see what you need to talk about if you want to get better for the phrase online chess. So on the right hand side here, we've got the underlying concepts that our competitors have talked about. So these these are our competitors. These are the 10 web pages that are ranking in the UK for the phrase online chess. So this stuff in the bottom is because we're in, this is this stuff that's coming out next month. So it's still in debug mode. So we're talking, you know, so we got the English Chess Organization, Chess Strategy Online. We got these important websites that Google think is very important.
So this was what Martin was talking about the Muse product, which I can't remember the first name.
Yeah,
of
Market Muse. Yeah, so like Market Muse, it's read all of those websites and it's extracted the underlying topics and shown them for us. So these are the underlying topics that we've got for it that we kind of need to talk about. And we're already talking about games and players and teams and master's degree in our content. But what we're not talking about is schools or learning or coaching or child, and these are important concepts if you're going to talk about online chess. Turns out that kids play chess, not 57-year-old men like me. So I need to talk about that. So if I go to my editor here, I can start seeing what I'm talking about and what I'm not. So my competitors on average are talking about, I'm talking about chess 9 times. My competitors are also talking about chess, and that's great. So if I look at that, we can see the synonyms for chess. We can see semantically close ideas, and then we can also have a look at what we're not talking about. So these are the ones with 0 we're not talking about. So you can add there and say, right, I am a student.
Yeah, I was going to say, what happens if you actually use your editor? Does it change?
Yeah, so now you see student just popped up in there. That's gone to a 1. It's still grey, which means I probably haven't talked about students enough yet, but it's picked that up in the idea. It saves every 30 seconds, but you can press save anytime you want. So as you type, it improves it. But there's more that you can do as well. If I go into the I want to go into the keyword research that I talked about in the presentation, but just before I do that, I'll show you the content plan that it's created, which is kind of the culmination of the thought processes. So now what it's done is it's gone and said, right, if you were starting from scratch, then you probably need to talk about the game of chess and talk about that. The online bit, not so important, but here's a couple of maybe talk about the best places. This is what the competitors are talking about. Then we want to talk about students and players and play. And so we've got this content plan. So you can imagine putting these concepts into your GTP3, if you like, and you've got a human, you know, you've got some kind of curation stuff. So instead of letting the AI run riot, then you've got at least some kind of guidance. But I think we're away from that for doing it effectively. But you can just add this in. You can say, right, I need to talk about this section. I don't really care about the online stuff. Now I realize that it's not that important. And then I want to talk about these sections, and it'll just add those into the editor as content ideas for you to talk about. So now the content writer has a better idea of what it is they need to talk about. So they really want to talk about these kind of ideas. They want to talk about them and cover these bases. And if they cover all those bases, then they're going to start improving their content dramatically, and that 1% is going to start shooting up.
So have a look at one of the other topics, which may be slightly more marketing orientated, or where you've got a good score. Okay. Let's have a look at the difference.
Okay, so if I go back to the project, so one that I play around with a fair amount, where I have got a good score is public speaking. I haven't run this for about 3 months. I was #1 for the phrase public speaking. I fight with a couple of other people.
And do you get your rankings when you run it?
So public speaking is the entity. The phrase I'm trying to work for is SEO speaker. So I think I'm 3 or 4 right now for the phrase SEO speaker. I need to go and run this again. But now I can see that I'm covering all the main topics for SEO speaker, but maybe I should be also talking about, you know, how do you make money out of it, or staff at these kind of things. But it's hard to improve after a while, because you've got your content right, but maybe my issue now is a speed issue. Maybe my issues are, you know, not enough links into those pages. There may be other things that may be a factor. After around about 85-90%, I would say the human has to go the final mile. In fact, so actually the quality of your content will make the difference. But it has covered all of the bases. But if I run this again and analyze all this again, it may be that, you know, one of my competitors on the phrase has come up with a few other concepts that are important, and it'll pick that up now and it'll say, hey, you know what, you should have talked about Brighton. You haven't talked about Brighton, for example, because Brighton SEO is a big SEO.
And if you go over to the SERPs analysis on this one, where you've got the top 10 pages, obviously you're in the top 10. So will you be in there?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I will be in there. Well, I wasn't when I ran it. When I did this, I was not on the first page, and then I got up as a result of doing this process.
Okay.
So on this analysis, I'm not. If I do it again now, I'll be in the list. You can, if you want, you can take people out of the list. So Luca he's an InLinks ambassador, Italian ambassador. So anyway, so if you wanted to take one out, you could take it out of the list. Also, if our spider is blocked, you can cut and paste the code of the page onto there as well, which may be a bit high tech, but there we go. But yeah, so it's got that stuff, and so it's extracted all the entities out of these 10 things, and that's what's given all the topic wheel. Have I got time to talk about the keyword research and the user intent part of it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be really useful.
Okay. So this is where we started breaking things down into clusters. I haven't run the whole thing for this particular phrase. I'm going to go back to the chess one if it's okay, because I literally it's up to date. So if I go to the latest added, so I've got my chess one here. So and also it's probably more relatable to people in general. Well, maybe not, but anyway. So in the keyword research, this is where we've kind of clustered everything. So like the other tools, we do come up with, here's the total volume around the phrase.
Can I just ask you where this data is coming from? So are you, once you get a page, is it a suggestion tool? Is it bringing it in from Google Ads? Where are you getting this?
So this overall volume we got from a third-party tool. But we don't really pay too much attention to that, because what we do is we take all the ideas that come back, we then feed those ideas back into, break them down to the underlying topics using our own proprietary natural language processing. We then feed them all back into Google Suggest, and that's when it starts coming up with all of these things on the side. So this has actually taken about 20 minutes to run whilst Martin was talking. So what it's done is it said, right, if you want to talk about online chess, then you probably ought to talk about playing. You need to talk about lessons. You need to talk about tutors. You need to talk about learning, for example. And then within all of those, here's a bunch of keywords and a bunch of questions that have been spat out by Google Suggest. So now we know that these are keywords and phrases that Google is saying might be relevant. But then we run our own natural language processing over those as well to make sure we take out the ones that are not relevant, or try and take out the ones that are not relevant to your website and your content. So with the horseshoes example in the presentation, for example, hopefully we'd take out the ones that are about pubs and passes, and just keep the ones about farriers, if that's Brilliant. What your site's about.
And I don't think we've got time now, because I'd like to answer some questions, because what is you've got the internal link part of this as well, which is where it gets its name from, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so the internal link part of things, if I go back to the project on this particular one, it's as soon as you have a human in the loop that says, right, this page is about something like consultants, then we can see, right, these are all the other times that we've talked about consultancy, and we've got these links. I won't use that one actually. So this one's about this one's about WordPress. I've made this my main page about WordPress. So then I've got all these pages linking into the WordPress page. So if I go onto the internal links, we can actually see those embedded as well. So we can sit there and say, right, on the page, I've got links to the chess page from the internet marketing page, and if I go and have a look at it, then or I've got links out as well, so I can see where my links are going in and out of the pages as well. And from here, I can edit them here, so I don't have to go back onto my website to do it as well.
Brilliant. Excellent. Okay, so have we got any questions? Lots of comments from James, who's absolutely gagging to get hold of the tool, because cool. He joined us a couple of months ago and hasn't had a chance to look at it yet. Martin said he's just signed up, which is great.
Good man, mine. That's good. So the version I've shown you is actually coming out in a few weeks' time. You've got a world exclusive, really. So it's the same stuff. It just doesn't look quite as UX friendly as well. I say hopefully it's more UX friendly anyway. But if you want a demo, then our guys can flip over to the new version. But the videos will all update as well come early September.
Brilliant. Okay, I don't think there's any other questions there for now. So I'd like to thank you very much for your contribution today. And just to follow what we did with Martin, we need to get Jono. Is Jono? Are you in the room, Jono? let him join us. Let's just raise the donation button again. Katie's going to be so proud of me. I'm usually really rubbish at doing all this stuff. So that's if anybody like to donate, even if you can only, donate 10 quid, it'd be amazing for the Ukraine appeal. And there you are, Jono. And then again, if you would like to leave a review and thank Dixon for all his contribution, that would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks very much for having me. Appreciate it. I've got to get myself ready for my next chess game now.
Well, good luck. I'm sure you'll do excellently. All right. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Hi, Jono.
Hello. Good morning.
Have you been? I've seen you've been writing lots of comments. Let me get your video ready. So what I've been doing is I've been diving straight into the video and then waiting to have our chat afterwards. So that so we'll turn all our mics and all the cameras on. Cameras off as well. So let me just get your video ready. I'm going to turn my mic off. Otherwise, we're going to get
the same.
See you in a bit.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm hoping that many of you have heard of and or used Yoast SEO, so I don't need to set too much groundwork. However, I will do a little bit of context just to set the scene for those of you who haven't. We are an SEO and content optimization platform, stroke plugin, stroke app. We have freemium model, so you can download and install it for free. There are premium upsells and add-ons and integrations, etc. We are running on about, at last count, 13 million websites, which is frankly terrifying as somebody whose responsibility is not breaking all of the SEO on all of those. We are open source contributors, so we spend a huge amount of our resources contributing back to WordPress, to PHP, to the open web. We believe in breaking down those barriers, making everything accessible and free, enabling everybody to get at least to a level playing field and then competing on their own merits. Yeah, it's kind of reflected in our culture and our investments in diversity and accessibility and a whole bunch of other areas. We were required last year by a hosting conglomerate called Newfold Digital, who are the largest hosting group outside of Amazon S3, I think. So we're starting to play much more closely in the kind of higher up or lower down the stack, whichever way you think about that, and starting to do more integrated stuff in hardware spaces and all sorts of cool stuff for hosting. So that's pretty fun. We have a reputational challenge that we are perceived as being quite cute because our marketing has a kind of cartoony look and feel, and you'll have seen stuff like this if you use the app. Today I want to break down some of those preconceptions because nothing could be further than the truth. Whilst our marketing language is intentionally quite simplistic and the way you interact with the app and the options in it are intentionally kind of option light and quite simple and friendly, there is a huge amount of technical sophistication that goes on behind the scenes. As a distributed app running on somewhere around 5% of the internet, that we have a hugely sophisticated back-end, incredibly sophisticated tech teams. We've got about 150 people, of which 80 or so are developers working across PHP, JavaScript, all sorts of cool stuff. We make very well-considered decisions about what does and doesn't go into the app and what makes it out onto the wider web, and there's a huge amount of thought and process that goes into that. So I want to show you some of the stuff behind some of the kind of fancy cutesy front end, some of the stuff that people don't see. Many people will be familiar with like our bullet scoring system where we evaluate your content and tell you if it's good or bad. There's a huge amount of stuff behind that that I think is quite interesting that we intentionally don't share to users because we don't want to overwhelm them, we don't want to confuse them, but I think it's quite interesting to explore. So let's take a step back briefly. Most of our users are from the WordPress ecosystem. And if you go to WordPress.org, where you go and download and install WordPress, there's a little section on the homepage that says WordPress is quote-unquote SEO friendly. This means nothing. It's language used by software that is trying to tick a box for RFP purposes and doesn't really substantiate it and mean anything. You can't even click that. It's not linked. There's no information. What little information there is about SEO on WordPress.org is incredibly out of date. Some of the advice is brutally wrong. You shouldn't follow it by any cost. Avoid at all costs. Out of the box, WordPress does very, very little to do with SEO. It allows you to use user-friendly URLs, which is not really even a feature. It has rudimentary XML sitemaps. It has rudimentary performance optimizations, but barely, and it'll give you a robots text file. That's about it. And it also does a whole bunch of stuff which is explicitly bad for SEO, like it generates 5 or 6 different feed URLs for RSS formats of every post you publish. I won't go into too much depth, but it does a whole bunch of stuff that it really ought not to. It doesn't do a bunch of basic stuff which you would expect a content publishing platform to do, like you can't write a meta description for a post. You can't independently edit the title tag of a post independently of the name of the post. These are kind of fundamental SEO things which you would expect to be able to do as part of a day-to-day process of content management. Maybe it was SEO friendly enough to get you into Google and onto the web in circa 2006. Really now it doesn't really even meet the basic requirements and the cost of entry to compete. It's woefully insufficient. And in fact, it's a little bit embarrassing when you compare it to the progress and the user friendliness of platforms like Wix and Shopify and others. That said, as a recent entrant to the Shopify space, Shopify also has problems. You'll see from this brief bit of Googling, Shopify SEO problems. Google is riddled with people complaining about the lack of similar basic functionality. So there's a real gap where these platforms that power a huge proportion of the web, like WordPress is currently 43% of the world's top 100 million websites. And Shopify is growing only about 5% of, maybe even 3% of that, but they're growing substantially over time. These platforms kind of lack the fundamental basics. Shopify is a nightmare to work with. It's incredibly limited in the way that they code. There's a proprietary ecosystem, all sorts of mess and challenges. So, I'd like to think that what we're trying to do is solve some of these problems. And as I said at the beginning, we really believe strongly that everybody should be able to compete. Everybody should be able to get into Google and be able to get their business in front of people who are searching for them, and that's the gap we try and fill. This can be a little bit controversial, but I think you can carve SEO in its totality into 3 key areas. I think that there's a foundation of discovery, where you've got to help search engines to find and consume your content before you can achieve anything else. And as part of that, you want to manage and crawl what they can access, what they can index, and specifically what they don't. Once you've got that in place, you can start fighting and competing to be indexed, where you're helping search engines to evaluate and understand and categorize your content. And then once you've got that in place, you can start worrying about ranking, where you're trying to convince search engines and users, and these are intertwined, that when somebody searches for a given keyword, your page is the best result for that. And you can loosely split, I think, where we play into 2 categories across these. There is a foundation of passive technical SEO, which is the stuff I want to talk about today, where in the background, invisibly and silently, we just get on with fixing and improving and adding stuff. And then on top of that, a bunch of tooling to enable you to improve your content, to understand what your users want, to evaluate your tone of voice, yada, yada, yada. A lot of what we do is behind the scenes, and that's intentional. For technical SEO, we don't believe that users should need to know or care about any of this stuff. For the large part, technical SEO feels like a solved problem space. There are binary ways of doing things. A canonical URL tag operates and functions in a certain way, and that is either right or wrong. If we ever find we're in a position where the user needs to be doing or interacting with this or understanding it, then something has gone horribly wrong. That does present some interesting challenges. And it's an intentionally different approach from some of our competitors, who I'm sure you've come across, who provide 101 options and toggles and settings and interfaces. We want to go in the extreme opposite direction. We are opinionated on what good looks like, and we're not afraid to make decisions on behalf of the user, again, because we think that getting it right out the box and visibly for everybody makes the web a better place. Critically, you need this hierarchy in order to succeed. If you have the best content in the world, but it's on a shoddy technical platform, you're never going to get discovered. If you have the best platform in the world, but you're writing nonsense and drivel, then nobody's going to engage with it. In both cases, if you have one strong competitor, you're going to get knocked off the podium. So you really need to build up this kind of structure. Let's zoom out. This is where you might see, so I'll come on some of these in some more detail, but some of the kinds of features which if you used Yoast, you'll come across, things like our XML sitemap systems and meta tags live in the discovery space. We do about 1 billion fixes to WordPress's core functionality. That's not even really an overestimation. We have thousands and thousands of lines of code and functions which change tiny little pieces of how WordPress works to either add functionality that it's missing or undo stupid stuff that it does or pivot and alter stuff depending on your settings. We don't have time to explore all of those, but it really isn't an overestimation. I want to talk through some of the technical stuff behind some of that, like templating and structured data, and then I want to avoid entirely areas around content like workouts, content previews, analysis, and our learning ecosystem. So, let's get technical. Look at a WordPress site. This is a brand new installation of WordPress, where I've opened up the Hello World default post, which why it ships with that and then doesn't no index it, I don't know, and I've added a picture of a cat. If we look in the background, we are notably not running Yoast SEO or any plugins for that matter, and this is the HTML source code that ships by default, and it is indeed a nightmarish, ugly mess. Let's install Yoast SEO, turn it on. Did anyone spot the difference? It is all of it. This is stuff that really ought to be fundamental in WordPress and would be if we had our way, but this is all the stuff we add, and you can see, for example, everything from tiny fonts, everything from meta robots directives, which incidentally a whole bunch of other sites get wrong out the box. This is opting you into Google's new legal frameworks for them being allowed to extract content from your site and show more than just a small snippet. This is going to be increasingly important in Germany over the next couple of months. A whole bunch of comments and stuff, canonical URL tags, open graph stuff, so when you share things on Facebook and Twitter and Slack and WhatsApp and Outlook, that all works and renders properly. A whole bunch of additional stuff for Twitter, a mountain of structured data, which we'll come on to shortly, a whole bunch of stuff for title tags, and this goes on and on. And then behind all of that, we also do a whole bunch of stuff with HTTP headers and status codes and error handling and all sorts of odds and ends and gubbins. We do loosely equivalent stuff in Shopify, same kind of principles, but the ecosystem and the technology works slightly differently, so it's not quite like for like. XML sitemaps, we essentially set the standards for how these should work. So WordPress finally added XML sitemaps to WordPress core recently, but they're not very good. So we output a sitemap for each type of content that you have. If you've used WordPress more than a little, you'll notice that it ships with posts and pages, which are similar but two subtly different types of things, but you might also extend that to add events or books or recipes, and these are different types of post. We generate a sitemap for each of these. We split them into smaller ones if there are lots of them, because there are max limits and performance implications, and every time you hit save or publish or update on a post, we ping this to Google and Yandex and Yahoo and a few others invisibly in the background, so they get the latest information, they know there's been an update. Note that we include all of your public content. So if you're, this is really challenging, I'll come on to this in a minute. One of the challenges with WordPress's core XML sitemaps is they don't distinguish between public, private, and different types of content and how it should be accessed. So if you have a plugin for managing invoices, and it's been built a little bit badly by somebody who didn't really understand what they were doing, there's a reasonable chance that those pages are publicly accessible, and if you're running WordPress's default XML sitemaps, you're going to be exposing those in your sitemap and explicitly saying to Google, hey, come and index my invoices, which is obviously likely to have all sorts of unintended consequences. So we do a whole bunch of filtering to protect that and manage it and make sure that nothing gets exposed that shouldn't be. It's pretty cool. There's a bunch of other stuff we do behind the scenes, but the biggest one of those is we build a database, which doesn't sound particularly exciting, but if you've ever poked around in WordPress's database, which you might have done from a performance perspective, you'll have noticed that it is built like it's from the 1970s. It's an incredibly archaic setup. It's running on MySQL still in many cases. The table structure, not to get into too much nerdy detail, the table structure is really inefficient, and it's inefficient for a bunch of legacy reasons that are now really hard to change because of how WordPress works. If we collectively started again and built it from scratch, we'd build it very differently, but we're tied into it working the way it does now. And as your site gets large and as your sites get complex, and as you start to store more custom data against posts like meta descriptions, canonical URLs, etc., things get really sluggish and really complicated. In fact, one of the real fundamental challenges is WordPress's database doesn't store URLs. It doesn't have a concept of a post's URL. And as an SEO, doing SEO stuff, we're all very kind of URL-centric. We want to think about how is Google crawling and indexing things, how are my pages doing. These are all things that live in URL spaces. WordPress stores information about the types of posts and how URLs should be structured, but doesn't store the URL itself. which means that when we start to do sophisticated things like saying, understand what should be in the XML sitemap and modify these things to break in these ways, but only if it's in this condition, this gets really slow because that database structure is a bit of a nightmare. So what we do is ignore all of that and we build our own thing from scratch. We go through and internally crawl your website, collect all of the information about all of the pages, and save those against our own index of URLs. And we do things like, what's the meta description? What's the canonical URL tag? How big is the featured image? When was it last updated? Who is the author? Hundreds and hundreds of data points against URLs, so that when we then want to do smart stuff like output an XML sitemap, we can do that in 5 milliseconds instead of 500 milliseconds. This is really frustrating, actually, that one of the big complaints and attacks that our competitors use against us is they call us bloated and slow. And whilst our plugin is bigger than many others and has more lines of code and is more kilobytes, A, because we're doing more stuff, and doing stuff requires code. Well, none of that runs all the time, so it's not less efficient. But also, this makes us much faster. If you've got a reasonably large site, running Yoast SEO with this setup and building these databases actually speeds up your site because we bypass a whole bunch of slow WordPress processes and make it much more efficient. So nobody has ever seen this, nobody's ever touched it, you probably didn't even know about it, but it is really cool and it's the foundation that allows us to do some really sophisticated things. And we're going to build more and more stuff on this. Like we can do really sophisticated internal link calculations in a way that are a nightmare to do in WordPress otherwise, and we can build on that as we go forwards. So one of the first things that we do when you set up Yoast SEO, you might have seen this, is we encourage people to start SEO data optimization. What's happening now is we're building the index in the background. If you haven't logged in recently and done this, I encourage you to do so. This will, A, speed up your site, but it'll make everything much more efficient. It'll save kilobytes, it'll save bandwidth, it'll save trees, which is quite nice. When you consider that this is running on tens of millions of 13 million websites, if we can make WordPress 1% more efficient on every one of those sites, we start to save rainforests. It's pretty awesome. What else? One of the challenges that we have with WordPress is that we don't have a huge amount of context. And if we're not going to ask you loads and loads of questions and make you configure loads and loads of stuff around your XML site and things, we have to make some intelligent guesses. We need some clues. We don't know whether your website is a hobby blog or a government website or a vet clinic or an insurance lead gen site. We can have some clues. If you're running WooCommerce, we think you're probably a shop of some sort, but there's a huge amount of information that we can't just infer magically. So we ask a handful of small questions. Again, if you haven't logged in a while, this is really critically important to do. I'll tell you why in a second. But we ask you two things. We essentially say, what are you? Is this site an organization or a person? So are you an insurance company, or is this a personal blog about a person or run by a person? And we ask you for a logo. This is used in a bunch of places around meta tags, around structured data and schema, which I'll come into in a minute, but this unlocks a huge amount of firepower. We try and ask as few questions as we can in order to make all this intelligent decision-making in the background, but this you really critically have to go and fill out. We do provide some controls, so if you've not played with this is pretty cool. If you've got a site with more than a couple of dozen pages, you probably don't want to be handcrafting meta descriptions and titles for every single one. Definitely for your most important pages and where you want to be chasing opportunity, go and spend the time on that. But at scale, you want to be systemizing some of this and automating it. So we have a template replacement system where you can say, the title for my posts or invoices or recipes or events or whatever it is should follow this format. And they should take these components and they should put them in this order and then automatically generate that across this page, across the site for any new posts that I create. This is super powerful. It makes everything much easier and much faster, and you can apply this at scale. You can bulk export, build these kinds of formats, re-import them, and it all applies automatically. That's really cool. Yeah, for example, also, I mentioned the invoices challenge earlier. You want to go in and look at whether the show post type in search results is ticked. If you have a plugin that, again, has been built poorly, which almost certainly everybody does, Dixon, when you log in, you will see things like, okay, I probably don't want this backend data in Google. I have a custom post type for something stupid built by somebody external that I don't want to expose. You can go through and micromanage all of these and get things out of search. That's really critical. Like this is my site. I run a plugin for helping with cookie compliance and GDPR stuff, and it creates custom post types in the background automatically for data leaks, which if I ever have a data leak, I am legally obliged to publish that on my website as a business. I do not want those in Google. And I don't have any at the moment, so it's a bit weird. I don't want to be generating an XML sitemap for this. If I do publish those, I don't want them ranking alongside my homepage. It's really critical to go through and exclude the stuff that you don't want in. And again, because all of this is interconnected to our indexables database stuff, we update all of those posts. We know which ones should be public, which should be private, which shouldn't be indexed. The XML sitemap updates, all of this talks to each other in a way that makes it super easy to manage. I mentioned that we fix about 1 billion WordPress issues. This is just one. A native WordPress site creates an attachment page for every image you upload. So if I upload an image of a cat to the media center, I now have a dedicated page that just creates that image. So it just contains that image. Which is a really weird thing. I'm not sure there would ever be a sensible use case for that, but it's something that WordPress has done forever. And for some bizarre reason, there's a huge amount of pushback on disabling and removing that. We turn that off by default, and we automatically redirect requests to those pages to the actual image itself. Because WordPress also, by default, links images that you put into posts to that post attachment page. Which is crazy. So you're not only generating huge amounts of pages, you're generating a huge amount of weird internal links to weird resources that are going to confuse users who click it. So we turn all of that off, we redirect it around, really, really nice. Bunch of other stuff as well. Okay, so let's assume for a moment that I've gone through, I've ticked these boxes, I've excluded stuff I don't want in. What has changed? This bit, critical. A few bits at the top, so we now know a bit more about the website, we know the name of it, we know what type of site it is, but critically this darker section, we can really go to town on the structured data and schema. I will zoom out for a moment and just give you a bit of context if you're not familiar with schema. This is the most important thing that's happening in search. This is the most important thing in the future of search. You will have noticed that when you search, the results look less and less like 10 blue links and more like this. These are rich interactive experiences. They are cards, they are widgets, they are tools, they are problem-solving mechanisms in the search results. The landscapes we are competing in and to access and to enter look more and more like this. This is mobile-centric, but desktop is also increasingly looking like this. These are lucrative, and eligibility for accessing these typically requires some degree of technical configuration. They need data, they need format, they need structure. Where do they get that? They get it from schema.org markup. This is structured data described in schema. You can just about make out here. Looks like terrifying code, but it's really quite simple. You can see that we are describing a product that has some photos, a description, a brand, and some information. When we communicate that to Google, you become eligible for rich results. You get star ratings, you get rich snippets, you get review information, you get pricing, availability, you get little widgets on images, you get 100 other things. So if you want these kinds of results, you need structured data to do that. We do it all automatically for you. We take what we know about your page, about your organization, your logo, the name of your site, cross-reference it against our indexables table in our database, and build all of this automatically on the fly. This is some of the most sophisticated structured data and schema on the web. We spent years writing the standard for this, defining what good looks like, elevating people's sites. This is really powerful. Out the box, this makes your articles eligible for a whole bunch of rich results, breadcrumb stuff, sitemap stuff, all sorts of odds and ends, really cool. It is, however, really hard to visualize and read. It's a big, dense block of code. Let's look at this in a way that is more closely aligned to how Google might perceive it. This is really, I think, one of the most powerful things that Yoast SEO does, and one of the things we do uniquely well that nobody else is really playing at this level. We are describing the narrative of everything on that page and everything about that page. This is an article called Hello World, published by an organization that has a logo. It's part of a page that is part of a website where you can search. It has the ability to comment. It has a how-to guide with multiple steps and multiple images. This is one cohesive narrative about everything on that page. It's describing it explicitly in a way that Google can understand. It is written by a person who works for the same organization upon which the website is published, that owns the copyright status, etc., etc. We build out these rich connected narratives that makes you eligible for all these rich results. And also, we know that behind the scenes, Google interprets this kind of information. They like these connections. It helps them understand the content and the topic of the page. You don't need to know about any of this. You don't need to care. You just need to know that we automatically do it in the background. This is one of my favorite things in the world. One of the things we do, which is quite cool with this, is allow you to natively output stuff into it through your content publishing process. So we have two blocks. If you've played with the block editor, Gutenberg in WordPress recently, you'll have come across this. If you search for Yoast in the block editor, you'll see we have a how-to block and an FAQ block. And you go through these, you author them, you add your questions, add your answers, you write your content, and then in the background, we invisibly stitch that into your schema markup. So we now say, this is an article on a web page, yada, yada, that contains an FAQ guide that has these questions. And again, all of this stitches together really nicely. What I really like about this is that it's one process. It's just your editorial content flow. You don't have to go to somewhere separate and say, this is what my schema should contain, and I'm going to microscopically select all of the data and connect all of it up. This happens seamlessly just as part of the process of writing and publishing. And again, this makes you eligible for rich result formats, like FAQ has a specific format, how-to guides show up really nicely on mobile phones, etc., etc. Let's go a bit deeper. One of the challenges is that every site is different. Every business is different and unique and will want to do slightly unique things. And our defaults are great for 80% of the people, 80% of the time. But in those other spaces where you've got something that's truly different, or you need to tailor it, or it needs to behave in a certain way, you need to go a bit more advanced. So we have a whole bunch of capabilities for power users that I think nobody has ever looked at and nobody's ever touched. For example, we have a comprehensive developer documentation site, which I've written most of, with all sorts of treats and toys. And if you want to get an edge over your competitors, this is where you need to be looking. Like the Yoast SEO plugin is really nice and really cute. This is the power. We publish huge amounts of information on how Yoast SEO works and the logic we use in all the different scenarios. This, for example, is a 2,500 word article that I wrote and researched and put together on how we decide what the canonical URL of a page should be. It's 2,500 words because as you start to interrogate that, it gets really freaking complicated. What should the canonical URL be for a paginated state of a date-filtered subset of a specific author's blog posts? Should that be blog/date/person/page, or should it be blog/person/date/page, etc.? So every single possible conceivable variation and permutation of that. We've done the work, we've documented it. And then that's how that works in the plugin. This is really interesting because some of you might disagree. And if you think that it should work differently, you can customize how it works. We have a whole bunch of APIs that if you have even a reasonably capable PHP developer, or hire one for, say, a couple of $100 to do something basic from Codable.io is really good for WordPress freelance devs. You can customize how these rules work. You can change, say you want to change or adapt the canonical URL. You can't see because that's quite dark, but in 6 lines of code, I can say, if it's a certain scenario, change the canonical URL value. You can drop that code in your theme, or you can write your own little bespoke plugin, or you can go to a marketplace and get it built for you. I would expect that to cost £50 to get a freelance dev on Codable to do with a little bit of a reasonable brief to say, okay, if it's in this category, then we should use this logic to change it to that. Trivial stuff, really straightforward to implement. Again, like any reasonable PHP dev with a little bit of WordPress experience can do this. Just to show you how simple this really is, I want to filter the Yoast SEO canonical URL. I want to use this function. This function says, if it's page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, output that canonical URL value. This isn't scary. Again, a little bit of PHP development experience makes this really trivially easy to do this kind of level of customization. And you might want to change that logic and do more sophisticated stuff. You might want to say, change the canonical URL if it's in a certain category, or if it has a certain author, but only if it's Tuesday. And you can start to build out this logic and do your own custom stuff. This is super easy to do. WordPress's own code reference documentation gives you all of the tools you need to do this. For example, if I want to change the canonical URL, if it's a certain category, I can use WordPress's isCategory function to check which category I'm in. You can combine this again. This is super trivial stuff for devs who've got a little bit of experience. What you might also want to do is grab stuff. So yes, you can change things, but you can also retrieve it really easily. Again, we have another API called Services where you can go in and you can say, I would like to get the meta description for the current page. Or I would like to get the OG image URL for a page with a specific ID. And you can use this to build custom behaviors, to output things in page templates, to do things that Yoast SEO wouldn't normally need to do for 80% of our users who have a fairly basic use case. Or you can say, if this type of page, if this type of post shouldn't be indexed, then we should grab the meta description and output it in the bottom of the page. There are all sorts of use cases where you might want to query information we have in our database to change how your template behaves. The most powerful API we have alters our schema output. And just as like we do all this stuff in the background, it's really sophisticated. We use our own API to build and power this. You might want to modify and extend that. You might want to say, for example, if this is our about page, change the type of the web page to about page. Different type of schema classification helps Google more specifically understand. You know your website and where you have information that you might want to alter. You can be really sophisticated with this. You can use our foundation and build upon it, extend it, integrate, do custom stuff. Much more sophisticated, I want to add an image to my schema markup. Change this article, grab image 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whack it into the data and call it an image. Again, reasonable WordPress developer, codable.io, spend £100, get them to add your logo to your schema markup, for example. Once you've got this, you can start to build out a much richer graph. Something maybe like this. This is my website. This is the about page on jonoalderson.com, which is quite nice. And you can see that there is an incredibly dense amount of stuff going on here. I'm telling Google a very, very rich story about who I am, my relationships to the people who are involved in my work, where I live, the quantitative values, the heights and widths of all the images I've got on the page, which country I'm from, the blog posting that I'm looking at, the comments on it, the people who commented on that, the faces of the people who commented on the blog post that's part of the article, that's part of the web page, that's part of the website, that's published by an organization that's owned by me. This is super explicit, and it's where we all need to be thinking about SEO. This kind of data marketing is increasingly how we need to communicate with Google. And again, it is trivially easy to do this. This was a weekend for me. I won't go take you through all of this, but you can see, add the VAT ID, add the URL, add the address, add the street address, add the founder. This is really simple PHP. It's really simple WordPress code. Again, spend a couple of £100 with a developer to go through and add this and customize it for your business. Tell these stories to Google so that they can understand. One last API, if you are super cutting edge and doing anything in the world of headless code, i.e. you separated your front end and back end of your website, it's a very modern, very trendy thing to do, all sorts of performance and security benefits. One of the drawbacks is that everybody with a REST website will inevitably utterly screw up their SEO. Never seen it done well, which is why we provide a REST API. So that if you are doing clever custom JavaScript-y stuff on the edge, you can literally just plug in a Yoast query saying, get the information for this URL, and we return something like that, which is the entirety of what we would have output if you'd got that page normally. So your developer no longer has to understand all of this. They no longer have to go, oh, I should, if it's a Tuesday and it's in this category, I should use the canon, which they inevitably get wrong. They can just query this endpoint and they can get everything which is exactly how they need it, exactly how it should be formatted, and they can just plug and play. And then very quickly, just to wrap up, we also have a whole bunch of stuff you can do to customize the behavior if you don't like the redirect annoyances and prompts, etc. If you want to change how the back end works, you can do all of that. You can manipulate the meta robots tag, you can change how stuff behaves, you can write your own logic, etc., etc. That's all we have time for. I haven't touched on all the stuff that you will probably know the plugin for, like our content analysis, like our social stuff, like our SEO analysis, etc., etc. You can go look at that on your own time, but please take advantage of the back end stuff that we've got. If you really want to compete and you want to push harder, you want to be using these power tools to say, my organization is 80% the same as all the others, but the 20% that makes us unique, you can capitalize on, you can customize, you can find those edge cases. All the power is there. Please use it. Talk to me afterwards. Thank you very much.
Well, as usual, Jono, you just squeeze so much in half an hour. And I always learn something new. So there's not many questions at the moment.
It's a lot for a Friday morning, I think.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I mean, we can tell from the audience there's not a lot of technical SEOs in the room. But I'd like you to think about that from a perspective of people using the tool. So, I mean, we're a customer. We've got it in our work. We've got a WordPress website. And so from a day-to-day basis, most people aren't doing the really techie stuff, are they? They're using Yoast to convert WordPress, which isn't really such SEO friendly, into something that is. So just for the benefit of the fact we've got so many novices in the room, and I know you talk to audiences of all different levels, can you sort of explain how they would, they don't have to be scared by what you've said, because you can use it at a really quite a simple level and get a lot of benefit, isn't that right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of the whole point. I think I said this a few times in the talk, that if we're doing our jobs right, then you shouldn't have to know about or care about any of this. There's a huge amount of stuff where we just get stuff right behind the scenes for you. And then if you really want to go further, the tools exist and the frameworks exist to help you customize. But most people's interaction with WordPress and Yoast SEO will be, I want to write a blog post, or I want to optimize my pages, or I want to try and improve the rankings of my product pages. here are some tools to help you with the content of that. And that content side I didn't talk about at all, because that's another hour and a half. But there's a whole bunch of tools for, have you structured your content well? Have you remembered to decide what focus keyword you're targeting? Have you distributed that sensibly throughout your content? Is this readable? Have you got a nice structure? And a whole bunch of other checks and analysis. I think we've got 30 or 40 different checks where we evaluate your content and we give you feedback in real time on that. Similarly to Dixon's InLinks thing he was showing you earlier about, have you mentioned this key phrase enough? But a whole bunch of other stuff like, sorry, go on.
And I was going to say, is it worth you bringing up your screen? And have you got? I'm sure you've got a WordPress of your cat site. We are getting some questions while you're doing that, so maybe.
Oh, very nice.
The first question was from Martin, one of the other speakers. He said about you moving into Shopify. Are you expecting to move into any of the other CMS, or is that all sort of under negotiation, like Wix, Squarespace, and all the others?
It would be really nice. We're definitely open to it in principle. I think there's a dream that we become the kind of standard for both the back-end technical stuff and the content analysis and the recommendations engines. We've had conversations with pretty much every platform. There's a general appetite in both directions for that, but there's a huge amount of technical complexity. All of these platforms work in different ways. All of them have their own SEO stuff, which is better or worse in different cases. They all have different constraints and limitations. I think in the long term, yeah, it'd be really nice to get some integrations into other places, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. But who knows? And yeah, there's a huge amount of work involved to do that. Like Shopify took us a long time, but ideally, yes. And increasingly, we see a whole bunch of the next generation platforms are headless, they're JavaScripty, they're decoupled, in which case we see people running WordPress behind that and using our APIs. So hopefully there might be a simpler version.
And the thing that other people might have not picked up on, the fact that there is a freemium model that you do have, you offer a certain amount, quite a lot of functionality for free, don't you? And then you just pay the extra if you're a little bit more serious about this.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we make a point of offering everything you need is in free. Like you want to optimize your content, you want to get into the search result, you want to compete with your competitors, all the tools, all the optimizations, all the schema, all the tech stuff is in there. The difference between free and premium is essentially two things. One is it's 24/7 support, which is really good. Like any questions you have, our team will answer, help you with. But the other is kind of early access to new features and stuff that streamlines workflows and helps you systemize stuff. Not automate. We're against automation in SEO for the same reasons as the AI talk earlier. Like you really want a human in the loop to make the right decisions, but we will recommend, we'll suggest, we'll try and make things a bit more powerful and a bit more scalable if you're kind of somebody who really wants to invest time into your SEO. So yeah, but everything you need is in the free version.
So Kirsty's asking a question about learning about technical SEO. I mean, there's a lot of free webinars. We've done quite a lot. I mean, a good starting point on technical SEO is some of the auditing. I'll see if I can put a link in a minute. What would you say is a good resource for people to go from zero to sort of hero in technical SEO? Go to somewhere like Brighton SEO?
Yeah, Brighton SEO is a great bet. And in the meantime, check out Yoast Academy, yoast.com/academy. We have a whole learning resource thing, and that's got a whole bunch of tech courses in it as well. There's a couple of free intro level courses, and then there's some premium ones if you want to learn specialist things around things like how do XML sitemaps work, or what type of server setup should I use, and all of those sorts of governance. So yeah, Brighton SEO is a great one. That's coming up, isn't it? That's it's in about a month.
Yeah, we've got some. Yeah, I'm there. I'm teaching again. Are you speaking, Jono?
I'm sadly not. And annoyingly, I'm at Yoast HQ over in the Netherlands because we've got a big company retreat thing that's organised the same week. So who at an SEO company organises an SEO event at the same time as Brighton? I don't know, but yeah,
it's October this year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody said, I'm a novice on SEO, want to play with this in the background without having to understand everything. I think that's a good point. Nice. Martin's saying it's a great session. He missed it on the day, so he thought that was really good. Joe, excellent tool suggested by everyone to really go away and investigate. A question to no one in particular, but take a step back. Where do I start? I'm responsible for 9 regional websites. We run SEO. We want to know what we can do. I mean, Joe, I know we're not here to sell, but what I would suggest you do is speak to Ange Padfield. We can at least do you a free technical audit, run through some of the tools that we use and give you an idea where you're doing. And then again, it's just a matter of our view on an agency is you only employ an agency for the stuff you can't do yourself. So, if we identify that you've got a technical SEO issue, or whether you've got a content issue, or whether you've got a link, link building domain authority issue, we can then guide you which way you need to go. You've got 5 minutes, Jono, if you'd like to share a screen.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Let me try and see if I can do this without breaking everything.
So you can get rid of the video. Top left, there's the little plus sign.
Nice, get rid of the video. Who needs to see my face, eh? Start
Yeah,
sharing screen.
I'll do the same. I'll get rid of my face too.
This window, okay. There we go, we got that?
Yeah.
Nice, so this is the back
end. What is an XML sitemap at the moment?
Yeah, nice. So this is a post that's live on the back end of Yoast.com, which if I just nip out, you can see on the front end. It's a little bit slow because I'm logged in and it's running a whole bunch of admin stuff. Apologies for that. I should have thought of that. Yeah, this is what it looks like on the front end. It's fairly straightforward. On the back end, we have the standard WordPress post editor, and in the sidebar and also down the bottom, you can see a whole bunch of analysis stuff. So we have said,
could you make it a little bit bigger, please?
Yeah, I can do that. That's a good idea, isn't it? There we go. Now it's huge. Super. So we have a concept of focus key phrases, which is as part of the editorial and SEO strategy process, you really ought to have a good idea of, I want this page to rank for this topic. And that's not necessarily specifically that phrase. So you might also want to say that, that sitemaps is a synonym of XML sitemap. They're closely related enough concepts that this page should be relevant for both of them. And you see what's really interesting is as I've typed that in, we're going to say, oh, actually, this isn't very good. And it's the same kind of thing that Dixon was showing earlier, that we've not mentioned the word or the phrase sitemaps enough. So we're talking about XML sitemaps, great, really on point. But if we want to say this post should be more relevant for a kind of broader, wider topic, we've not done a great job of making sure that the content is diverse and comprehensive enough to do that. So there's a kind of general overarching, are you on topic, are you on point type of analysis? And then there's a whole bunch of specific flavors and points that it will pick up. Now it's going to hide all the stuff that I've done well, so it's only going to show me problems here, but it says things like, okay, you've got no outbound links in your content. That might be a problem. I think that one's really interesting as an example of where we are quite opinionated. So linking out to other pages almost certainly doesn't affect your rankings. It's almost certainly not a ranking factor. However, the act of curating and citing and linking out to other content from your content means that you've done the work of thinking about who else is relevant in this space. How am I verifying and validating that I'm an expert? How am I showing that we're connected to other resources and that we're, what we're talking about? The act of doing that improves your content because it makes it less about you, it makes it less self-reflective, it means it's probably more neutral, and that definitely improves the chances that your content is more accessible, more relevant, etc. So there's some stuff in here that's quite clever, that's a bit of a psychological play, but there is other stuff that's quite explicit, like, okay, we haven't included the key phrase in the title, which is a bit concerning, we ought to do that. Of our images, we're missing alt attributes, which is an accessibility concern, as well as a kind of minor SEO concern. We've also got another page that we previously targeted with the phrase XML site. Now, that's really concerning. On our site has a few thousand blog posts and a whole bunch of pages.
So you might get some cannibalization there. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we can dig through that and we can find out where, and we can unpick it and try and fix that over time. And then a whole bunch of stuff that we've done well. And there's some quite clever stuff in here, like we can say, what's our key phrase distribution, where we're using this. And I know keyword density as a metric is very old school, it's very out of fashion, it's very limited, but we use variations of that to try and say, it doesn't matter, you don't have to use this keyword a specific amount of times, but what you do have to do is stay on topic, make sure that you don't just cram it in 100 times in the first paragraph and never mention it again, that you're really staying on that and making sure that it's kind of sensibly distributed, and a whole bunch of other stuff like, have you got sensible headings? Now that's all the SEO explicit stuff, but then there's also
and can I just ask you a second? Is this
yeah, sure.
This is the SEO premium, but do you get a lot of these features in the free version as well?
Yes, yeah, almost all of this is in free. I forget what the exact distinctions are. Like, I don't think you can use, you can't use synonyms and related stuff in the free one, but you can do almost all of this in free.
And the thing that's interesting is you look at this page and look at the suggestion page that Dixon had in InLinks. You know, the fact that the page is structured, and you've got the H2s and you've got the images and you've got the links. You know, this looks like a well-written, well-structured page. And the amount of crappy blogs that I see where they just put 500, a block of 500 words, and you think, well, who is this giving any value to? Whereas this, you can see great value in this content.
Yeah, and there's some stuff that I always struggle with. For example, I'm quite a technical writer, and one of the strong principles we have here is that everything you write should be accessible and should be simple to read. And we get a lot of kickback and a lot of flack from people who say you're forcing me to dumb down my content. And I think there's a really interesting distinction there, that if you want to rank well and reach a broad global audience, which of course everybody does, that's why we're involved in SEO, then you need to make sure that your content is accessible to all of those people. And that involves people whose first language isn't necessarily English. It involves people who struggle to read large blocks of text at once. It involves people who don't understand your acronyms and your industry language. So we do force people to make sure that it's, if not simple, at least accessible. And there's a whole bunch of stuff like using the passive voice. I really struggle with this one. The way you structure your sentences and where you include the kind of focus points really impacts how readable your text is. And you can see, for example, this phrase, every single website you've got to read this whole sentence to know what it's about. And if you switch that around, it would become much more readable. So there's loads of really clever stuff here that we've got a whole team of linguists. I think we've got as many linguists as we have developers working on the logic behind this in 20-something languages. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, all sorts of stuff with this. And then also people will probably be familiar with the kind of more practical stuff, like help me configure how this looks in
Google. And I think if you're just doing a post, that's usually what you see on the left-hand side, isn't it? So that's, without diving into all the nice stuff on the right, that's a lot of people, that's all that they notice when they're using Yoast, and they're not really taking the benefits of all the rest of the technology behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, they shouldn't really need to get into the deep tech, but if you want to, there's a whole bunch of gubbins here that you can start to drill around in, which is quite cool.
Yes, interestingly, Martin's just said that GPT-3 is great for rephrasing text to make sure you get it in the right person, third person.
Yes. So we've been... I was going to say, we've been looking into kind of AI content generation, reformatting options. And one of the challenges we have is a lot of them they'll spit back a whole bunch of content, but then it's going to fail a whole bunch of these criteria. So they can be really good for kind of tactically saying, you know what, rewrite this specific sentence. But if it rewrites it in a way that just means it fails a different type of analysis, then it's pretty problematic. So we're struggling to find something that's clever enough or integrated enough to solve those problems, but it's definitely on our radar. You can streamline a whole bunch of these workflows.
Excellent. Well, look, if you'd like to turn your camera on, and if we've got Josh in the background, I don't think we've got any more. Oh, there you are, Josh. Brilliant. So just as before, I'll just bring up the donation and the reviews for you. But as ever, thank you so much for speaking. I always love our chats, and I always learn absolutely loads. And
thanks for having me.
And you are very welcome. And I'll see you very soon. So that's I won't see you at Brighton, unfortunately. So this is the appeal for everybody that wants to donate to Ukraine. And then I'll just bring up the reviews. And if you like what, please mention Jono in your review, so we know that he's done a good job. And then we'll pass over to Josh. Thanks a lot, Jono. See you soon.
Thank you. See you later. Bye.
Bye. Excellent. Last but not least, what I'll do is I'll just bring your video up. How long have you been at Ahrefs then, Josh?
I think it's about three years or so full time.
Okay.
I actually started out as a kind of freelance writer for them. Like I think 2016, started working on the blog, like writing freelance, then went full time 2018, I think. So yeah, it's been a good few years that I've been kind of in that area anyway.
The interesting thing I think about this is that I obviously chose people I knew, like Dixon and Jono. I've known them for years, but also I didn't know you, but we met with some of your colleagues at Brighton, deliberately asked you to attend because we wanted to show some of the software that we personally use. And what I found interesting is just how much Ahrefs has developed over the last few years, but also quite a lot of our guys use it for primary research, which helps for both PPC and SEO rather than just SEO alone. So I think it's quite an interesting tool that it's starting to be more holistic than it was in the past. So I don't know if you've got any comments on that or whether we should just dive straight in. But
well, I mean, going back a decade or so, I suppose it started out basically as a backlink checker, like that was like the thing that it was known for. And it's obviously grown into, you know, keyword research, some technical SEO auditing capabilities. So yeah, it's becoming a lot more like an all-in-one SEO tool, and obviously like a bit of a fierce market with those kinds of tools at the moment, which is good for people doing SEO because it means that you get, you know, the competition and the kind of tools getting a bit further forward and developing.
And on the Ukraine thing, you guys donated a huge amount of money, didn't you? Do you want to just say what your initiative was on that?
Yeah, I think so. Basically, it was, if I remember correctly, it was basically the amount that you donated to one of our kind of verified Ukrainian charities. I think we gave you double in like the equivalent value of Ahrefs subscription. So if you donated like a month's worth of cost, say it was $99 a month or £99 a month that your subscription was, we give you kind of 2 months for free if you could verify to us that you donated to the Ukrainian charity. So I think that raised, can't remember how much now, but I think it was well over $1 million. If I remember.
Yeah, no, it's a huge amounts of money. So good on. And where are you guys based originally? Are you from Europe anyway?
Yeah, so I've always been from.
No, not you personally.
Yeah, Ahrefs. So yeah, the founders from Ukraine. Tim.
Oh, they were from Ukraine. I knew there was a sort of family connection or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of Ukrainian employees, and you know, a lot of staff. Some still in Ukraine, some that now aren't in Ukraine for obvious reasons. But yeah, quite a lot of staff are in Ukraine, and you know, the founding members of the company are Ukrainian, mostly anyway. But now obviously based in Singapore. Yeah.
All right. Well, if we turn our mics off and our cameras off, because if I hit go, it will create an echo, and I'll see you in about half an hour.
Yep. No worries. Speak to you later.
So obviously what I'm going to talk about today is basically just using Ahrefs. It is called for SEO and more. It's pretty much just for SEO. I realised this yesterday. I don't really talk about anything more than SEO. So Ahrefs, I'm guessing you're all at least a bit familiar with it, given the fact that you're here and this is literally about Ahrefs. So I was thinking yesterday, I thought, you know, there's not really any way that I can tell you how to use Ahrefs like 1, 2, 3 step by step, because there's just so many things you can do with it. It's not really like you can do SEO by just doing 1, 2, 3 things or whatever. So what I've basically done is taken the 3 things that I think most SEOs are at least somewhat involved in, or, you know, the 3 kind of broad facets of SEO, which are keyword research, link building, and technical SEO. And I've basically just come up with like 5 use cases for each one. So hopefully, I'm just going to go through those, and hopefully some of them will be useful to you, depending if you're doing one of these things. So I'm going to start with keyword research. So the first one is to find a keyword's traffic potential. So to explain what I mean by this is one of the keywords that we ranked for, Google search operators, and we ranked for it number 1 with this blog post. So if you plug this into Ahrefs, and you look at the amount of traffic, estimated traffic to this page in the United States, it's about 3.3 thousand a month to this page because we rank number 1. But if you actually look at this keyword in Keywords Explorer, you see that the search volume is lower. So probably what you'd expect if you were doing keyword research and you came across this keyword is that you might think, well, you know, that's the max kind of traffic I can get from this keyword, and probably even less, because if you rank number 1, you're only going to get a fraction of this traffic, and just people are clicking result 2 or 3 or whatever. So this is kind of misleading when you're doing keyword research. And the reason for this is because if you rank for one keyword, chances are that you rank for a bunch of other keywords as well. And you get traffic from those keywords as well as the one that you're actually targeting and ranking for. So you can see there that we actually that page ranks for 338 keywords in the top 10. And it gets traffic from all of those keywords, well, many of those keywords. So recently what we've done is introduce this new traffic potential metric in Keywords Explorer. So this is just to help you kind of get a bit better insight when you're doing keyword research rather than relying on the search volume. Traffic potential is basically a metric. It looks at the top ranking page for that keyword and it says how much traffic is that page getting. Well, that's what we are going to say, like we're going to guesstimate that that's the traffic potential of that keyword. If you rank for that keyword, you'll probably get about this much traffic to your page if you can rank for that keyword, because you'll get traffic from all those other keywords. So that's the first one that I wanted to share. You can basically see this traffic potential metric when you're doing keyword research. For all of the keywords, type in any keywords, any seed keyword, get hundreds of thousands of keywords, see this traffic potential metric. It just gives you a better idea of the amount of traffic you can actually get. So another one is keyword clusters. So the way that I think of this is a bit complicated. I feel like I'm starting off with the most complicated ones. But keyword clusters, the way that I think about this is it's like keywords related to each other. So say if you've got like Indian restaurants, related things might be like a cluster of like locations that people are searching for, like Indian restaurants in London or Cardiff or Brighton. And you can often find these clusters when you're doing keyword research. So for example, if you type in a seed keyword like Indian restaurants and you start looking down that list of ideas, you do start to see these pop out, like I've highlighted a few there. You can start to see this pattern of like locations. And you might think, well, if I'm going to build out some content, I might build out a little cluster around this, you know, make Indian restaurants, then have Indian restaurants London and all this kind of stuff. But because there's so many keywords in there, it can get a bit messy and you might not be able to, it's difficult to focus on these and find these. So one of the things you can do in Ahrefs is literally, so what I did here is I noticed this pattern and I thought, well, there's probably a lot of other locations that people are searching for. So I literally just Googled a list of UK cities, found a CSV, downloaded that, copy and pasted all the cities. If you put it in the include filter in Ahrefs and switch it to any word, you can basically say, please show me keywords that contain my seed keyword, Indian restaurants in this case, that also contain one of these other words. So now we've instantly got a list of all the locations that people are searching for in terms of Indian restaurants, and you can find like a cluster and you know, understand which places people are searching for stuff within. And obviously, if you want to do like a little content hub or something around that, as people like to do, you can do that. So this is probably the one I should have started with, as it's a lot simpler. Find competitors' pages with traffic. Literally just grab a competitor, put it into Site Explorer, go to the top pages report, and you can see all the pages on their website sorted by estimated traffic. So again, good for keyword research. You can just literally take your competitor, throw it in there. You can see which pages are getting the most traffic. You can see the top keyword that they're ranking for, which country that keyword's in. You can filter by country as well, if you like, if you want to see the traffic from a certain country or the top keyword that it's ranking for in a certain country. So the top keyword is just a keyword that's sending the most traffic to that page. So just an example there. You can also add filters. So for example, what I'm doing there is I'm adding a traffic filter. So I'm saying show me pages that get an estimated at least 500 visits a month, that rank in the top 10, and that are a low keyword difficulty. So now I can see that this page, for example, on Content Marketing Institute, gets 517 visits a month, estimated organic traffic, and it ranks in the top 10 for how to get more views on TikTok, 6.4 thousand, and it's getting loads of traffic from low difficulty keywords. If we wanted to do that, if we wanted to try and target that keyword. So the next one is to find pages with traffic and a few links. So obviously, the more competitive a keyword is, it generally aligns with the amount of links that it's got. You know, if anything that's ranking in the top 10 has got a bunch of links to it, you're going to struggle to compete. So if you can find pages that get a load of traffic that don't have many links, well, chances are that's about an uncompetitive topic and will be quite easy to go after. So you can do this in Content Explorer. So if you've not used Content Explorer before, it's kind of like a mini search engine, not the search engine that we just launched and that's completely different. It's basically got 9 billion pages, I think, at the moment. So you can basically just search for any keyword. You can find content related to that, and you can filter by SEO metrics, which is something common. So, for example, I'm just searching for protein using an title. So hey, show me all the pages.
Cleans the shit up out of your Gmail. So you end up with much cleaner.
About 9 billion pages. And then what I'm doing is I'm filtering for pages with up to 5 referring domains. So 5 linking websites. So these pages haven't got many backlinks. I'm also filtering for pages with at least 500 visits a month. So what I'm doing is basically looking for pages with no or few backlinks, but also get traffic. I've also added a domain rating filter there just to weed out any kind of high authority sites that may be quite difficult to compete with. So you can see that this is just one of the results that I found. It's a guide to baking with the protein powder. Low DR website, only 4 referring domains, so hardly any backlinks, and it's getting an estimated 800 visits a month. And if you dive into, well, if you look at that graph first, that's showing you the traffic trend over time. So you can see it's been quite consistent over the last 6 months, which is indicative of like a reasonable topic in my opinion, because if it just spiked, it's probably just like a news article or something. You dig into the keywords there. So if we do that, literally just like a details button there, you can click to get this information. The top keyword it's ranking for, baking with protein powder, keyword difficulty score of 16. So this is probably going to be quite an easy keyword to rank for. If you've got a fitness website or something, you can just find these keywords and obviously got traffic potential, just this page is getting traffic, it ranks number 1 for this keyword. So similar to this one is finding new pages with traffic. So more often than not, I'm sure if you're doing SEO, you've experienced this, if you publish something, it kind of takes a while to rank. And this is going to be more likely to happen if it's a competitive topic, simply because it's competitive. So if you can find new pages that are getting traffic already, say something that's been published within the last 3 months, well, chances are that's not a very competitive topic, and chances are that if you've got a site of a similar caliber, you can probably do the same thing, rank for it quite quickly. So again, you can do this in Content Explorer. So it's a similar search here. The difference is that I'm searching for pages with traffic, and I'm saying, show me pages published within the last 90 days, initially published within the last 90 days. So new pages with traffic. And again, just one example that comes up. This page published on the 9th of March, which is just within 3 months, I guess now, gets an estimated 3.3 thousand visits a month. Again, low DR website, about high-protein smoothies by the looks of it, and that's the top keyword that it ranks for. So, this page has been created recently, it's already ranking. So this topic, high-protein smoothies, if you've got a fitness website, could be worth going after because there's a high chance, or at least a probable chance, that you can rank reasonably quickly for this keyword. So that's keyword research. I'm just going to do the same thing for link building now. Basically just go through 5 things. So the first is find guest post opportunities. So guest posting, I think, is an old school tactic. It's still pretty popular from what I've gathered from surveys and things like that. You can pretty much, so the way that most people do guest posting is, you go to Google, you can search for these Write For Us pages, basically pages that websites stick up online to advertise for people to write for them. Issue with this is everyone's looking for these pages. They tend to be a bit spammy, a lot of these websites, in a lot of cases, because they just want content and publish any old crap. So one of the different ways you can do this is just look for websites that are writing about the kind of things that you want to write about. If they're doing that, if they've been publishing content about these kind of things recently, chances are if you just reach out to them and say, hey, look, I see that you published about this, maybe you could have, maybe you want me to write a post about something similar, they might be receptive to it, regardless of whether they've got these Write For Us pages and all that kind of stuff. So again, in Content Explorer, you can just search for a topic. So say if I wanted to write about link building, I could search for keyword research. If someone's published about keyword research, they're probably going to want something about link building, or at least be receptive to me pitching that to them. So you can find stuff that's been published within the last 90 days, again, just to weed out sites that are no longer publishing content. If they publish something about this in the last 90 days, they're obviously still publishing, they're going to be receptive to a pitch, or probably receptive to a pitch. Also adding a filter there for website traffic from 5,000 plus. So this is just looking for websites that actually get traffic. Because if a website doesn't get traffic, you probably don't want to guest post for it and get a link from it and all that kind of stuff. And I added the DR filter there just to focus on reasonable authority sites. So you can also filter there, just filter for 1 link per domain, so you don't see the same website a bunch of times. So you just get loads of pages there. So all of these pages, published by people. Just click through to them. For example, one of those there was actually the Ahrefs blog. If you click through to the Ahrefs blog, you see that there's multiple contributors for that blog. So if you see that happening, reach out to them, say, look, see that you've written about this within the last couple of months, maybe you want to post about this. So it's just a different way of doing guest posting, basically, or finding guest post prospects. So number 2 is finding skyscraper opportunities. So I'm sure that I'm going to guess that you've all heard of the skyscraper technique. It's kind of like the most famous kind of link building thing around. It's been around for a while now. So a really easy way to find these in Content Explorer, again, just search for a keyword, filter for pages with X amount plus referring domains, so X amount plus linking websites. Easy way to just find pages with a bunch of linking websites to them. Then you can create something better, reach out to them and get your links that way. So just go to the backlinks report to find anyone linking to that page if you find a good opportunity. So third one, which I don't see anyone talking about, and I don't actually see anyone ever talking about this, which seems a bit odd, but so the skyscraper technique, basically all you're doing there is finding a page with backlinks, making something better, then reaching out to everyone linking to that page and saying, look, you're linking to this page, mine's better for whatever reason, maybe you want to swap out that link. So the problem with that skyscraper technique is that you've got to create a brand new piece of content, which is a right hassle. If you've got to create something really good from scratch, well, that takes a lot of resources. So what you can do instead is just look. I mean, most people have got content on their website already that's good. So if you look at the content that you've got that's good, and then you find inferior content, and basically just do the same thing, you don't have to create that content from scratch, you've already got it. So to do this, a really good way to do it is, in Site Explorer, put your own website in there, go to the organic keywords report, which shows you all the keywords that you rank for. Then filter for your top 10 rankings, and also filter for the keywords that you rank for that have a high keyword difficulty score. So this is the opposite of what you'd usually do if you were looking for keywords that you wanted to rank for. The reason that you're doing this is because keyword difficulty is derived from the number of links to the top 10 ranking pages. So the simple way of putting that is if the top 10 ranking pages for a keyword don't have many links, the keyword difficulty score is going to be low. If they've got a lot of links, the keyword difficulty score is going to be high. So if you filter for high difficulty keywords, you're looking for keywords that you rank for where the top 10 ranking pages have lots of links to them. So you've already got content about these keywords, remember, because you're ranking for them. So for example, we've got a piece of content about long-tail keywords. We rank number 3 for this, and it's got a high keyword difficulty score. So if you look at the search results, the top 10 search results for that keyword, you see why that keyword difficulty score is high. Because all of those pages have got lots of websites linking to them. But we've already got a piece of content about that. So if we just look through these websites, focus on this one, for example, Neil Patel, everyone's favourite SEO blogger, we can look at that. It's got 1,000 plus referring domains. If we look at the actual content there, we see this. I'm not going to read this out. You can read it for yourselves. What I perceive to be a really crap definition of long-tail keywords that's really difficult to read and makes virtually no sense. And remember, we've got a piece of content about this already where we believe that we've defined it better. And this page with this definition has got 1,000 websites linking to it. We can just go to the backlinks report, find all of those people, reach out to them and say, hey, look, you're linking to this page. It's got a really crap definition, makes no sense. Maybe you link to us instead. We didn't have to create any new content. You're just doing the skyscraper technique without creating any new content. So, fourth one, find broken link building opportunities. So broken link building, people have got their opinions on it, does or doesn't work, whatever. It works sometimes, basically. Really easy to do this in Content Explorer because we save dead pages in there. And you can filter for dead pages. So you can literally just find dead pages by topic. Just search for a topic like SEO, filter for broken links, and filter for pages with referring domains. So now you're finding dead pages about whatever you want with backlinks. So one example here, when I search for SEO, this one from Matthew Barbie, 201 referring domains with 200 plus websites linked to it. If you look at the page, it's just gone. Don't know why, don't know what he's done, but yeah, then you can actually go into Ahrefs and you can click the little arrow thing next to the URL. There's usually an archive.org link that pops up, so you can just literally click it, look on Wayback Machine, which is like going back in time and seeing what the page used to look like. In this case, you can see it's just a page, 19 SEO tips, nothing that complicated. And this is a dead page, remember, it no longer works, this is what it used to look like. So we can just create some other list of SEO tips, reach out to everyone linking to that page and say, look, you're linking to a list of SEO tips, it's gone, link to ours instead. So, similar to that, another one that I don't really see people talking about, find your 301 link building opportunities. So with dead pages, the pages are literally dead, they're gone completely. But what you also see happening quite a lot on the internet is that people redirect pages, or URLs, to just redirect them elsewhere over time. So I'll show you an example of this. So if we just type in WordStream, like a competitor, just put a competitor of yours into Ahrefs Site Explorer, go to the Best By Links report, which shows you the pages on the website sorted by the most links, so the most linked to pages on that site. If you filter for 301 pages, it's basically showing you all of the redirected pages with the most links on that website. So most of these are going to be not useful. So you can see this one, for example. You can tell from the URLs that basically someone's just reorganized the URL structure a bit. This post is probably the same post, they've probably just moved it a little bit, like they've taken the date out of the URL there. But chances are this is the same content, it's just the same thing, which is not useful. But what you do sometimes see, if you look through this report, are irrelevant redirects. So people have got content, and they decide for whatever reason they don't need that content, and they think, well, this has got some links, I'll just redirect it to whatever seems relevant, something similar. So in this case, you can see there's a page about internet search engine history, and someone's redirected it to a page about search engine marketing. two completely different topics. So this page has got 689 referring domains, and this is what the page actually looks like. The page that it redirects to is this page, and this is what the page with all those links looks like that they redirected if you're looking at the Wayback Machine. So they're completely different. So now what's happened is anyone that's linking to this history of search engines page is inadvertently linking to this page. Makes no sense. So you can just literally do the same thing as broken link building, go and find all the links to this page, say, look, reach out to them and say, look, you're linking to this history of search engines page. This person's like redirected this to something else. You're not linking to that anymore. If you rebuild this page, you can just claim those links or a percentage of those links, whoever responds. So that's link building. So technical SEO, and I think this is probably the quickest one. So before I go into this, anything that you can do in this section, worth pointing out, that you can do completely for free in Ahrefs. Just sign up for Ahrefs Webmaster Tools. As long as you can verify that you own the website that you actually want to look for technical SEO issues on to us, then you can do all of this for free, like completely free, up to something like 10,000 pages a month. So really basic one to start, find basic on-page SEO issues. If you crawl your website with Ahrefs Site Audit, go to the content report, you can literally find all of those basic errors like meta descriptions that don't exist, that are too long, title tags that are too long, all of that kind of stuff. And you can set up scheduled crawls, so Ahrefs can just crawl your website every week or day or month or whatever you want, and you'll see in that change column if you get more or less kind of meta descriptions that disappear or issues. You can see that it changes over time, and you can see if this is like a common problem that keeps occurring on your website or whatever. So that's a basic one. This is a slightly less basic one, orphan pages. So orphan pages are pages on your website that don't have any internal links to them. So if you just forget to internally link it for whatever reason. And these are actually quite difficult to find usually, because if you crawl your website, you're not going to find orphan pages because there's no internal links. So you usually have to look at things like server logs and log files and all that kind of stuff, which is the best way to do it. But if you just want a quicker way to maybe find some of these links, when you set up your crawl settings in Site Audit, tick this backlinks thing. So this is something that's unique to Ahrefs because we've got all of these backlink data. Usually these crawling tools literally just crawl your website. We've got all this backlink data, so we can use that as a crawl source. So we basically can say, if this page has got some backlinks, but it doesn't have any internal links, we can find that when we crawl your website. Well, not crawl the website, we can say, look, we crawled your website, and we didn't find this page, but we see it's got a backlink, so we can tell that that's an orphan page. So yeah, they show up in Ahrefs Site Audit as well. Not all of them, again, because if it doesn't have backlinks, it's not going to show up. But I think that's, I don't think there's any other tool that can do that I know of. I'm sure someone can tell me that I'm wrong, but yeah. So, dead pages on your website. Again, you can do this easily in Site Audit. Just crawl your website and it's going to find all those dead pages. And then, if you've got a lot of these, you can literally just add a referring domains column into that report, sort it by referring domains, so now you can prioritize fixing these dead pages on your website by the number of people linking to them. So if you've got a lot of backlinks to a dead page, you're probably going to want to prioritize fixing that first, and you can do that kind of thing. And similarly, you can find dead external links on your website. So if you're linking to something and that's disappeared, you can find these, just go to the external pages report, click the broken links, and you'll find all of these dead pages that you're linking to. You can then go and fix those or remove them or change them or whatever you want to do. So the final one, find internal link opportunities. So internal links obviously are useful for various reasons, help people on your website actually find content that you want them to find, and also direct kind of PR or whatever you want to call it to these pages and boost them a little bit. So what we're looking for here are contextual link opportunities, internal link opportunities. So for example, there's a report in Ahrefs Site Audit. Again, I don't think any other tool's got this. It basically looks on your website for contextual internal link opportunities. So what you're seeing there is this report. So you can see that what it's basically saying is you've got this page on your website, on our website in this case, about duplicate content. And it's saying on that page, you mention faceted navigation. This is a little snippet from the page. And it's saying, hey, you've got a page about that on your website. Why don't you link from that page about duplicate content to your page about faceted navigation using that, using faceted navigation as the anchor? So it's saying this is a contextual link opportunity. And it can just, it finds these by looking at the the keywords that your target page ranks for. So if that starts ranking for faster navigation, somewhere in the top 100, it'll say, look, this is probably a relevant keyword. It'll look for those keywords on your website, and it'll kind of suggest putting an internal link there just to help boost it again a little bit in the search results. And you can filter this report. If you want to build internal links to a specific page, you want to boost a specific page, just filter for that page, target page, and it'll find all of the contextual internal link opportunities on your website for that target page. So that's basically it. If you want to follow me, I'll upload these because I know this has gone through pretty fast, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
There you are, Josh. Your mic. You need to turn your mic on.
There we go.
Yeah, I just wondered if you could put your email address in. What I'll quickly do is I'll just put the Ukrainian donation up again, and also the reviews. I know quite a few people have got meetings at 12 o'clock. What would you say is your best bit of advice for somebody that's using maybe the free tool to start with, and then why would they go up to the paid tool? What can you really do? That what's the difference between the free tool and the paid tool?
Yeah, so the free version, so it's called Ahrefs Webmaster Tools. So if you just Google Ahrefs Webmaster Tools, you'll find it. So that's like a completely free version of Ahrefs, which basically gives you access to two tools, Site Explorer and Site Audit. So in Site Audit, this is your technical kind of auditing application in the cloud. And you can basically crawl your website up to 10,000 pages, I think it is, 10,000 URLs. And we'll tell you all the stuff like the missing meta descriptions, title tags, duplicate content, all this kind of stuff. So that's completely free. You can do that for your own websites as long as you can verify that you own that website. In Site Explorer, you get limited access to that. You can basically plug your own website in, and you can do all the stuff that I was talking about in the presentation, like see your top pages by traffic, see the keywords that you rank for. So whereas Search Console might limit you to like 1,000 keywords or whatever it limits you to, we'll show you all of those. So you can do that completely free. The difference between the free version and the paid version is that with the paid version, you get access to tools like Keywords Explorer, so you can do keyword research, Rank Tracker, Content Explorer, again, which I was talking about. But you can also use Site Explorer and Site Audit to analyze other websites. So you might put a competitor in, you might want to see what their top pages are and find keywords that way or topics that way, or you might want to look at backlink opportunities, or you might just want to crawl a competitor's website and just see what their structure's like or something like that. So yeah, the main difference is limited access to the tools in the free version, and obviously with the tools that you do get access to, you can only use them to look at your own website. But there's still quite a lot of stuff you can do with that, as hopefully. Yeah,
I think you get about 5 searches a day if you're just going in to see the domain ranking and the referring domains and stuff. I think you if you're not logged in, you get a limited number.
Yeah, so there's we do have some like free tools. So if you Google stuff like backlink checker or just free backlink checker, I think it's us that's ranks number 1. You can literally just plug a page or domain into that and see some of its links without even signing up for Ahrefs or anything like that. Same with the keyword tools. There's like a free keyword difficulty checker and all of this kind of stuff. If you actually go to ahrefs.com and just scroll, probably I think it's all the way to the bottom in the footer. They're buried a little bit, but there's like a free tools list, and there's actually a free tools page somewhere. So yeah, there's probably a good starting point if you're new to SEO and don't want to.
And I think what surprised me, I think because I'm using other tools to do the stuff that you do, I sort of in my head thought of Ahrefs being very much domain ranking, details of the links. We use it for our PR team, we use it a lot. I didn't realize just how many tools you'd got to help with the content side and the key phrase research side. So that was quite a pleasant surprise. And I think it just goes to show that you can have a tool in-house and not use it to its full potential. So one of the things we're doing next week is we're having 2 half-day workshops where internal teams are just trying to cross-train everybody else to bring everybody up to a certain level. But is there, Jono mentioned the Yoast Academy, but have you got an Ahrefs video academy that you could possibly put a link in the chat? Because I think that would be really useful for people.
The link. So yeah, there's pretty much, exactly the same thing, ahrefs.com/academy, which I'll put the link into, which is basically just a bunch of free video courses, like a lot of beginner stuff as well, like, how to learn an SEO. And obviously there's some use of the Ahrefs.
And have you got some specific stuff about using your platform in more detail? Is there some videos?
So pretty much anything in the Ahrefs Academy. There's literally a course in there, 47 lessons, just over an hour, that's literally just called how to use Ahrefs. So that's literally like, a beginner's kind of starting course. And then there's an SEO course for beginners. And throughout all of this content, even if it's just, SEO course for beginners that's not Ahrefs specific, you'll find, mention of Ahrefs in there. That's like basically our marketing strategy, which is, like content marketing.
Education.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Josh.
I posted it in the chat. Anyway.
I know that you haven't had quite as much time as some of the others. I think your presentation was probably the easiest to understand in the sense it was nicely laid out in nice blocks, whereas I was expecting there to be a lot more discussion around the other section. I feel I've maybe deprived you of a bit more conversation, but there has been less questions on your section. And also, I'm guessing a lot of people are starving. So thank you so much for talking again. It was a real pleasure.
No worries.
And thank you for all your help. And for everybody else, we'll send the video round in a couple of hours. And I think next week we're going to be talking about podcasts and audio. So you should get an invitation on Monday. And if anybody's interested in tourism, destination marketing, we've got an extra webinar just for that sector on Tuesday. So if you go and check your inbox to see if you've got an invite, you should receive invites for these. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys on Tuesday and on next Friday. Bye.